Somebody was late due to a last minute drop from the show. Scrub King could not make it. We found out about 1 hour before showtime. He sent us a message and said he could not make it. We tried to get a replacement with Polar. That did not go through. Thankfully, now we have... Oh, actually, there they are. Socialism Done Left will be the replacement for the left since they will not be making it. I hope that suits everybody in chat as we start off the show with the first topic, which will be, is Biden continuing kids in cages? Okay, let's get this show started. Welcome back to the Hippy Dippy Roundtable. Let's unmute. Hey, can everybody hear me?
Yes!
Hello.
Wonderful. I'm hearing a little bit of echo from somebody. One second.
Hello.
There we go. It's fixed. Okay. Welcome, everybody, to the Hippy Dippy Roundtable. Another amazing installment. We have some new guests here today. We have, actually, it's going to be Maddy. I think this is your first time appearing on the main show, isn't it, Maddy?
That's right. First time.
Wonderful. So, after I go over the rules, you will be the first person to introduce themselves. I think I'm happy. She actually went through the recruitment process, and I really liked what she was doing on the show, and I thought she'd be great for the main show. So, let me go over the rules for everybody very quickly. The first rule, of course, is not to do anything against terms of service. I would like to keep this show very much, and I would like to not get banned. This is my favorite show I do here on the platform when it comes to, I mean, it's definitely the audience's favorite show. It's really not mine. So let's try to keep it in circulation. Okay, the second rule is going to be that the usual notepad that I use, sadly, I don't have. Due to my housing situation that I don't really want to go over here, I lost the notepad in the transition. I didn't think, oh no, the sacred notepad. It wasn't the first thing that came to mind. Sadly, I thought about food and clothing first, like an idiot. Okay, so we will not be having the secret notepad, but I will try to have. I will have a notepad on my computer, which I will be trying to type your notes, your names into. So you can always raise your hand if you can't budge into the conversation, and you will be written down. So later on, if I have an opportunity, I'll bring you into the conversation. So say it's gotten too intense and you can't barge your way in, raise your hand as a last resort, and I'll try to see if I can bring the conversation to you over eventually. There's a few banned words, and all these banned words are slurs for obvious reasons, and we try not to call anybody here words like bitch or cunt, words like that. We don't try to use that here. Okay? Is everybody clear with the vast majority of the rules?
So question, are we going by like what's currently like triggering people, or is this off limits? I mean,
is that a doctor?
Yeah, this is one of the banned books.
Did you bring that hate speech onto my platform? Turk,
that's why I'm asking. That's why I'm asking
That's very
at the
offensive.
front.
1 second. Let me kick you out of the whereby. I'm sorry to all my viewers who had to see the cover of that book. It's very offensive. We actually we had a last second admission to the bonus topic, which is cancel culture. So later on, you guys will be able to pick if you want to have cancel culture as one of the topics. But I think I've gone over all the rules. Is there anything I've made unclear? Anything that needs to be stated? Oh, here's one last thing. At any point, if I'm talking, everybody tries to shut the conversation down immediately so I can moderate and do my job. If not, then I will, of course, have to start handing out mutes, and that's never friendly to anyone. And lastly, I want to say to you guys directly that I don't moderate niceness, but I encourage it. So please do your best to be polite. Always be nice. Make sugar your favorite spice. And to the chat, none of these people are quote-unquote experts on a lot of the issues we're talking about. If they are an expert on the issue we're talking about, they will declare it at the beginning. Please try to look for other sources for your political opinions. Don't just try to find one streamer you like and have a parasocial relationship with and just adopt all their opinions. Please think for yourself. Now, and that I've made everything clear, I'm going to go around the room and everybody's going to introduce themselves. So I'm going to start with Maddy.
I am a progressive organizer and activist based out of San Francisco. I started streaming on Twitch a couple months ago to bring my activism from the real world into the virtual to talk politics, policy, economics. My academic background is in economics. However, I've spent the past 10 years doing digital marketing for big tech and other companies, and recently decided that I didn't want to make them money anymore. And I'm founding a progressive design agency, which is launching soon, and I'm really excited. So stoked to be here. It's going to get spicy.
Happy to have you here. Next, we're going to go over to their left, over to Hutch.
Yeah, what's up, guys? First of all, Dylan, thanks for having me on. I, got known in the streaming space and on YouTube for gaming stuff with Call of Duty exploding in like 2009, but I've been interested in politics since I was a wee lad of 18 or 19 years old, so that was quite a little while ago. And I don't have any academic credentials. I dropped out of college. Thank you for letting me speak.
No problem. I'm going to throw it over to TheTerk as I try to fix my camera quick.
Yeah, so I'm TheTerk. I stream science and tech here on Twitch and do YouTube stuff. I cover PC hardware, any kind of tech stuff, do reviews in there. And kind of like Hutch, I don't primarily do politics and stuff, but I do find it interesting. So if you have any science and tech questions, I actually do work in hardware development, so real tech.
Wonderful. Next, we're going to throw it back to, we're going to throw it over to Dronetek, actually. Drone, we currently cannot hear you.
Oh, yeah, I forgot I have to actually key for this. Sorry. Thanks for having me, Dylan. I also have a YouTube channel. It focuses primarily on getting outraged about the media and just kind of pointing out their bias and stuff along those lines. I also go out and I do interviews at protests. At least I did before the whole Corona thing. I do hope to go out and do that again. But that's pretty much it. Thanks for having me.
No problem. We're going to throw it over to Socialism Done Left.
Hey, I'm Aiden. I make memes and I do debates. You can find me on YouTube and Twitch. Socialism Done Left.
Wonderful. Next is Tiffany Star.
Hello, Dylan. It's great to be back. I've missed being on these panels. Anyways, I am Tiffany Star. I am also known as the Adult Entertainer Gamer. I play a lot of video games on twitch.tv/xxxtiffany_star XXX. And I do politics and current events on my YouTube channel, which is just Tiffany Star, where I usually dunk on conservatives, anti-SJW gamer bros, and TERFs. So come subscribe. It's a lot of fun, and I can't wait to have fun with all of you tonight on this panel.
Okay, now I'm going to throw it over to my favorite farmer, KOE Nation.
Well. Thank you for having me on this evening. The Dylan Burns TV on the Hippy Dippy podcast. Folks, give it a like, share, subscribe. What are you doing? You know it's the right thing to do. But because you said sugar needs to be our favorite spice, do not worry, sir. I am the man of the hour, the man with the power, the man too sweet to be sour while making the other podcast cower. Your king of extreme, Phil KOE. You can find me on YouTube at KOE Nation for all your KOE content for daily poetry readings. And in March, we are getting into the March Madness Sweet 16 Bourbon Tournament to find out which bourbon will be the bourbon of extreme. You can also find me over at Revolutionary Wrestling Podcast and Big Buckin' Empire for all kinds of great daily updates and just fun times on Thirsty Thursdays. I also make guest star appearances on the Tomfoolery Show, Dad's Worldwide, and Yanked Up Podcast. I am a man of many hats, and with all that is my beginning general introduction, but I'm also, as he said, a farmer from Nebraska. Thrilled to be here. I'm also the internet's leading shill for big peace. And with that, I yield back to all of you beautiful people.
You were my favorite Grand Theft Auto radio host. I'm going to throw it over to last username.
Hey, I'm last username. Occasional Twitch streamer and frequent panelist and Canadian libertarian. Just want to give a moment of sympathy for the QAnon Viking who is currently languishing in jail and is about to get the Chelsea Manning treatment from the state for the crime of being, let's say, led astray. So, yeah, kind of sad. But good to be here.
Okay, so we've gone over basically everything we have to go over. And once again, I want to ask everybody, I'm going to try my best not to moderate your niceness, but I do try my best to have everybody here try to be polite. And I'm going to ask that one more time. Now, we're going to go into the first topic. So, with the start of the Biden administration, there has been a lot of criticism online and in the general sphere about him, if he is continuing the quote-unquote kids in cages policy, if, of course, that is, if you don't also believe that Obama already had kids in cages. So there's a lot of discussion around it on whether the Biden administration is going to be continuing that policy or if the left are being hypocrites on the issue. So I'll try not to inject any more moralistic language into it because that, of course, that destroys any good question. So I'll just throw it over to the room, and I'm going to start over with TheTerk.
I get to go first. So basically, we need to have consistent border policy. And I think as the commander in chief, him putting these unaccompanied minors into these facilities so that they can be processed in a due manner, I think that's the right thing to do. I do have compassion for people that are not fortunate to be here in America. So it's like, I don't want these kids to just be like turned around and kicked out. But I do, like you said, find it very hypocritical that the same facilities that were being used by Trump were deemed one set of verbiage, whereas both under Biden as well as Obama, it was claimed to be this other thing. So I think there needs to be consistency across the board. And I really do think that this is going to be a pretty big problem. I live here in Texas, so I've got a lot of opinions on the matter. And yeah, that's it.
Okay, next is going to be Dronetek. I cannot hear you.
Obviously, this all started with Obama. It didn't really start with Obama. It goes back further, especially the policy of separating the kids from the parents. And I don't want to see it happen. I don't think anybody does. The media attacks the right and tries to make us out as monsters because we support Trump, and that was a Trump policy. And if you remember, the whole scandal started with pictures from the Obama administration. It was never a scandal during his administration, then it suddenly became one. And that really goes into the media's reporting back then and kind of separating Obama from anything bad that was ever happening. But I like Turk, I agree that it's got to be done. I mean, we didn't ask them to come here. Their parents sent them here. They have to be processed. I don't see any other better way to do it, really. But obviously, yeah, it's being treated completely different because it's Biden now. And yeah.
Okay. Next, I'm going to throw it over to last username.
Yeah, I don't know if there's much I could say about this. I mean, it's, you're going to have these horrible situations until you actually have, in America, a sensible immigration policy that you can actually enforce consistently. And until then, you're going to have these situations where there's no good way to handle it. You either put children in jail, you separate them, or something. Yeah, I don't know.
Okay, next is going to be KOE.
This is a very unfortunate situation we find ourselves in, no matter how you want to look at it. It is a modern day Othello. It is a tragedy, no matter which angle you want to look at it. Nobody likes the idea of kids in cages. Unfortunately, the adult analysis of it is there is a reason that this is being done. The reason that children are being put in these facilities, is because there is a worse option. There is a choice that we can make that would be worse than that. And it looks something like allowing children to simply go across the border with potentially human traffickers, unless we actually are able to identify who's going with who. So this is very unfortunate. It's one of the tragedies of our day, but unfortunately, the reason we're doing it is that it implies there is a worse option. And I yield back.
Okay. Now I'm going to throw over to Socialism Done Left.
Sure. So it's a partial continuation and a partial break. One of the big things that lefties were critiquing during the Trump administration was the detention of kids at the border by CBP, Customs and Border Protection. I think there's another P in there somewhere. That, as far as I'm aware, has mostly ended, or at least for things that are like other than temporary. The really big thing under Trump is that many kids, something like 50,000 kids, were detained for over 72 hours in CBP facilities, which were those like cage facilities on the border. Instead, the facility that we're talking about here is a DHHS, the same facility that runs like Medicare and Medicaid. Like institution that runs Medicare and Medicaid is running these facilities. And so it's a step in the right direction. I think that if you wanted to have a better Biden policy, it would be building these sorts of camps or facilities closer to cities so that they have more citizen oversight, so that there can be more like visitation, so that it's not out of public scrutiny. But I think that the argument for the current like camp reopening is that it was opened due to COVID overflow. There were too many kids for the regular camp where they do it. And so that I think is somewhat understandable. I think it is, however, a failure in the long term of the Biden administration not to move towards a more humane immigration policy with respect to like building camps, more similar to like normal housing and closer to cities and with greater oversight and so on. So I guess the answer is partially yes, partially no. I do think there's a little bit of hypocrisy, but I think it's an enormous improvement over that of Donald Trump.
Okay, next I'm going to go to Tiffany Starr.
All right, well, I'm going to prepare to get canceled by the left. I'm against putting migrants in camps regardless of the administration. That being said, we have to remember that these places are meant for immigrant children who arrive unaccompanied by parents or guardians. So what do? We could release the children into the United States without properly vetting their sponsor, but that could lead to the children being released into states with no guardians at all, or an unfit guardian that's not vetted. Besides that, the Biden administration would refuse to do that anyways. Alternatively, we could send the teens back to Mexico on a dangerous journey home to a crisis they've tried to flee in the first place, which leftists don't want to do at all. So what do? It's a complicated topic for sure. I don't agree with detaining the children. After all, a nicer prison is still a prison. But what's the alternative? If they have no place to go, I mean, take them down, take down their info, drop them off downtown and say, good luck, kid. That's like a disaster waiting to happen. Ideally, these detention facilities are meant to hold children until their guardians are vetted, upon which they will be released to them. While waiting, they have access to shelter, food, water, education, and their own beds. Not to mention, these facilities are run by Health and Human Services, not Homeland Security or Border Patrol. Photos of the facilities show a world of difference when compared to Trump's camps. They actually practice social distancings like adults, for one. In a shitty situation, but it's better than being thrown to the wolves. I truly hope this is a temporary solution and not the new norm established by Obama back in his presidency. Biden said that his hope and expectation is that the facility won't stay open very long, that we'll be able to provide for every kid that comes across the border to safely be housed in a facility that is licensed. I hope that's true, but I don't trust it. I don't trust Biden as far as I can throw KOE Nation. And I believe we should still continue to criticize Biden for this and other decisions made by him.
Okay.
I resemble that remark.
You resemble it?
Yes.
You resemble it.
We're going to throw it over to Hutch.
Yeah, I honestly thought that this topic would be a lot spicier than it's turned out to be, because I think most of the people that have spoken, I think, have had reasonable takes. Although I do have to say, it's not like Obama didn't catch flack from the media and activists during the surge of unaccompanied minors in 2014. He got grilled, and it was one of the reasons why he was forced to address that issue as quickly as he did. The other thing too is that this isn't just a departure from Trump's family separation policy, which, to be clear, started with him. It didn't start with Obama. Didn't start with George W. Bush. That started with Donald Trump. It isn't just a departure from him in that regard. It's also a departure in the sense that we're no longer turning away unaccompanied minors. We did that under Donald Trump. His policy was to push everybody back to Mexico and let that country deal with the crisis at our border, which made its own humanitarian crisis with tent camps all along the border, tens of thousands of people in really deplorable living conditions. This is one of those topics where there's no good answers. What do you do when 80,000 people show up at your border, or 80,000 kids show up at your border in 1 month? I think Tiffany did a good job of explaining the problem. You can't turn them away. I mean, you can, but I think it's not a good policy to turn them away. You can't just let them loose at a bus stop down the street, and you can't just give them away to the first guardian who shows up to claim them or offer to be their sponsor or whatever, because you have to vet these people. You have to vet these parents because, like KOE said, you don't want to turn them over to something like a human trafficker. So I do agree with SocDoneLeft that one appropriate way to criticize Biden on this is the fact that these facilities in many cases are positioned so far away from society. They're really far removed. So it's hard for activists and lawyers and whoever to get in there and provide proper oversight. Unfortunately, the way that you do that is by giving more money to agencies like DHS and HHS to build these facilities. But ultimately, I think what's sorely needed right now is an immigration bill. It's very unlikely that something like that would ever pass through the Senate. So I don't really know what the short-term solutions are. That's
okay. It. And the last person before it's an open forum is going to be Maddy.
Yeah. So the only reason that we're talking about this situation, if we take a step back, is because of the policy coming in from the Trump administration. And Trump's policy on children at the border wasn't controversial merely because it resulted in children being held at the border. I think we've all sort of summarized that has been happening for a long time. What made it controversial was it forced children to be separated from their parents, given their hardline policy requiring parents to be held and not released into the country, and given that children couldn't be held with their parents. So that's the only reason we're even fixated on this. And the reason that the new facility opened up was because there was a surge of unaccompanied minors at the border as soon as the administration transition took place. So the administration needed more space. The alternative, of course, is sending kids back on this treacherous journey and into countries where their lives are at stake. So, of course, that's not an option. And then the alternative for not holding them then somewhere at like a facility would be releasing them to the care of a sponsor or someone who says that they're a family member, and that needs to be properly vetted, because there have been instances where children were released to someone's care without that person being vetted, and then those children were used for unpaid labor and other horrific circumstances. So there's not a great, it's not ideal, and I would say I think it's right for people to speak out and try to hold the Biden administration accountable, especially given that he was elected on a platform that included a humane approach to the border. But for now, I think they're just using the resources available to them. And it's not like they inherited anything super great from the outgoing administration.
Okay, this is now an open forum. You may begin.
So I want to be clear, there's plenty of topics here, but we're specifically talking about the Carrizo Springs facility. HHS is taking in unaccompanied minors, right? Because there was a lot of discussion about separating children at the border and stuff. This is specifically unaccompanied minors for this facility.
Yeah, that's why I said in my opening statement, specifically children who they show up without a guardian or a parent.
Okay, so
right, and I was just framing it.
Okay, so as a Texas resident, Carrizo Springs is about an hour and 50 minutes if you're going the speed limit from San Antonio, a really large metroplex. There's plenty of other cities and municipalities between that city and San Antonio. And there's also several other towns between the border and this facility. So to go against what Hutch was saying, they're not like in the middle of nowhere. Sure, the valley here in Texas is pretty sparse, but it's not like they're in West Texas, right? They have the ability to get representation. There are people that are deployed through DPS, through all sorts of different immigration places. So it's like, yes, they could be housed in better places, but it's not like they're in the woods, right?
Well, it was reported by...
I was just about to say, I've been to Texas. When you get south of Dallas, it's almost one continual city along the highway. So like, I just want to throw that in as a side. I'm sorry. Go ahead, sir.
The critique that these facilities are being placed a little bit more removed from society, this is something that many activists have said in terms of Carrizo Springs. I'm not super familiar with the geography of Texas, but ideally you would want these centers, these facilities, as close as humanly possible to big metro areas, because you're just going to get more accountability that way.
Well, and I mean, there was plans under, I think, many administrations, maybe not under Trump as a priority, but there are plans to make additional facilities for these particular people in Dallas, in different municipalities in Texas. I think they're even flying people up to, not Georgia, but there's another place kind of like not Northeast, but on the east side, eastern coast that these people are going to. So it's like, there are plans for this relocation. It's just like Maddy said, this is an instant surge. There was nowhere else to put them. So this was the best place.
Yeah, I agree. And also you got to remember this facility was already built. So the convenience factor is there as well. I don't think SocDoneLeft and Hutch was saying that there's going to be no oversight. I think what they mean is they'd probably get better oversight if they were closer to bigger cities. But if what you're saying is true and they're going to be making centers in cities like Dallas or close by, then that would be great.
Does anybody in this call think that we shouldn't be holding these kids at least temporarily in order to process them into the system? it seems like we all agree that some kind of facility must necessarily exist, right?
Yeah,
And I think that-
temporarily. Because the like we said, we went over the alternatives altogether. Like throw them out on the street with a stranger or by themselves, or send them packing back to Mexico. Both are terrible ideas.
Yeah, and I think,
Well, it's not just Mexico, but
Well, like I said, my
Well,
opening
I'm
statement,
talking
it is,
about.
but through
that implies that there's worse options. Like
Yeah.
there are clearly worse options, and we all understand that. And that's the very unfortunate reality of this particular situation is we don't like where we're standing, but there are much worse options than what we're doing right now.
yeah, I
Right,
think the
and-
real. Sorry, go for it.
no, I was just gonna because I don't disagree, with the kids. None of us want them there, but I do take issue with this sort of rewriting of history that's trying to happen here, and I don't feel any need to defend Trump anymore. I mean, he's gone, but I mean, these policies have been going on for a long time. Tens of thousands of kids were separated from their families just through deportation under the Obama administration, and I feel like that's part of our problem here is that everybody's trying to inject politics in the game politically from it, and so we can't come to an agreement.
That's completely apples to oranges. The child separation policy of prosecuting everybody who crossed the border with a misdemeanor offense and then using that as a justification to take kids away from their parents, that started under the Trump administration. That did not start under Obama.
Yeah.
Well, the no tolerance started under Trump, but
The zero
kids were
tolerance
still being
policy
separated.
Not at the level that you're describing. This is not the same thing.
Okay, well, not at the
That's a
level. Okay,
different
maybe it
degree,
wasn't
not a
happening at the
different
numbers,
sign.
but it was happening, and it was
happened-
happening at the border.
Something
Okay.
I mean,
happened.
Trump,
They had
Trump
a-
Trump instituted a very specific policy that was not in place during the Obama administration, where they wouldn't even let children be held in the same facility as their parents, where they were forcibly separated. And we now know because of reports that came out from the White House, where they talk about the meetings where the White House staff and the cabinet members were discussing potential policy, and the entire rationale for that child separation policy was the cruelty, and they saw it as specifically a deterrent. So that itself is unique to Trump, and that's not something that's disputed. That
wait
is
a second.
fact.
It wasn't
Wait,
just
no,
Trump.
give
that
me
was
no, no, wait,
doing
give me
it.
wait a second.
Give me a moment. I
Wait a
want
second, the
Drone
floor
Tech.
is
Give me
open.
one moment. Okay. Dronetek was trying to respond to that earlier. This is I want to make sure Dronetek has a period to respond to that.
Yeah, just quick. When the Flores decision, when that was all going on, they were saying that holding the kids with the parents in detention was being used as to keep people from coming as a deterrent. So it's kind of having it both ways there. I'm just saying. I mean, that was the reasoning behind that, was that keeping the kids detained with the parents was a deterrent.
I'm completely.
being used as
Can
a-
you drop?
Can we-
Can you drop a source for that in the chat? Because that's the first I've ever.
Yeah,
heard of that.
absolutely. Yeah. One second.
Yeah,
And can we be
Need
clear
a
on
reliable source.
when people
no
are
Fox
identified crossing the border? We don't know if the people they're with are their parents. There's several instances of it being, someone that they're related to, not their parents. It could be a coyote.
Exactly.
That's the entire reason why they are separated, so we can make sure we're putting these people in the right categorization. Because if they're going to go through the asylum process, we need to make sure that they're actually with the right people. We don't want to just lump them in with people that are not related to them.
that's a lovely rationale, but unfortunately, that was not the rationale that the Trump administration used for instituting the policy. But that sounds really nice.
I dropped
That's
a.
why we're doing
Yeah,
it.
not to mention that there are kids that
That's
have
why
gone
we've been
missing.
doing
Right.
it.
One at a time.
Because
Okay. I just want to be clear for everybody. When two people talk, we don't get double the information. We only get 0% of the information. So let's try to do our best to give different people chances to talk, and I want to give KOE a chance to respond to that.
Got that source, by the way. Vox.
I thought when that happened, Dylan, I thought we got triple information. I thought it was even better. My bad. But no, the reason this is happening is just like what the last person that talked just said, yes, the reason this is being done is because we need to make sure that people are being released to the right people, to make sure that they're not being released to, as I said earlier, human traffickers of any kind. There's really nothing wrong with making sure that people that are coming into our nation are not being exploited in some way. And so to me, we're kind of splitting fine hairs between the cages and the overflow facilities, because if you look at some of them, they're basically shipping containers with an AC unit and bars over the windows. So we're splitting a very, very fine hair between the two of them. And like I said, you know, this is bad. It's terrible. Nobody likes the fact that this is happening, but there's a hell of a lot worse alternatives out there. And we all kind of acknowledge that. So to say this is based on cruelty or this is based on that, like, no, we're trying to make sure people don't get exploited when they come into our nation. And I yield back.
If you're referring to the Carrizo Springs shipping containers with the AC units and the bars, those are intake areas. Those are where kids go to for their intake processing, and then they're relocated to a separate area.
It's just funny how you guys have found all this nuance. All this nuance.
Don't split the pretty fine hair.
Well,
I know, it's like...
well, wait. That matters. I mean,
where did all this nuance come from?
It also mattered
in
2 years ago or 1 year ago.
Came
But
to
no one
like
cared.
happened in the
now.
last 2 months. We found all this nuance.
Hey, one at a time.
I posted that link for
wait.
you guys, by the way.
I didn't see it in the chat. Where did you put
I can read
It's
it
in
here.
the whereby chat.
If you want. It says immigration advocates challenged the policy of family detention under Flores, and judges agreed with them, in large part because it said that the Obama administration was out of bounds in detaining migrant families for the purpose of deterrence.
Okay, I still don't see it in the whereby chat, but I mean,
Send it to me, and I'll send it. I'll give it to Hutch. I can DM to him on Twitter.
That'd be good.
Technology, folks.
I
The
think-
things we can use this technology for and the stuff we use it for. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I think if we reduce the conversation as far as what's happening right now to just kids in cages, you're making an incredibly complicated subject. You're stripping all of the relevant context and nuance. And it's not that this has just become a relevant thing in the last couple months under Biden. There have been plenty of people that have been passionate about this issue, want to inform themselves properly. But it doesn't help anyone to understand the problem when you just reduce it to that.
Well, hey, look, we just went through 4 years
Where
of
was
complete
that
distortion.
talk a year ago?
What
right,
distortion?
it's like
wait, what
nothing but
distortion do you
distortions
think?
for 4 years.
Wait,
but
what
now you want
distortion?
nuance.
What distortion do you think happened with regards to Trump's immigration policy?
I just gave a great example there. What do you say to that?
You're talking about Obama. I'm asking you about Trump right now. What was
I'm
distorted
talking about
about
the standards? Biden's in control now, so it's very easy for you to say, "Oh, well, now we should be very nuanced. We need to look at the detail." We just got done with 4 years of you guys just like throwing, any of that out the window.
Can you elaborate? What was distorted?
I
when
just
it came to
said,
Trump's
you
policy?
guys were just saying that Trump was such an evil person because he was using the separation of the families as a deterrence, right?
Yes.
And I'm telling you that the Flores decision that happened because of I'm sorry. Right. They were saying that Obama was using the Flores decision to keep families together as a deterrence.
So you don't understand the difference between keeping families together and separating them? You don't
I
think
could
that
draw
there's
you a
huge
picture.
But you're saying that Trump is a bad guy because he was doing this.
Yeah.
You're saying that he purposely did this as deterrence.
Yes.
I'm telling you that the other way around was also called deterrence.
When they were keeping families together?
It was never a media big story, though.
It wasn't just that he was separating parents from their children. It's the fact that they weren't keeping track because they didn't give a shit. They lost, what was it, 545 out of like.
See, you say that, but you don't know that. You say like they don't give a shit.
What do you mean
That's
I don't know that?
We're referencing actual data. We're referencing the data of all the kids that were separated at the border, and then their parents were released back, and their parents were not reunited with their kids.
Okay. So, again, like I said earlier, one person at a time is the best way to go. So we're gonna do a hand raising now because it's getting a little off the rails. So Tiffany raised a hand before you even asked for hands. Tiffany's ahead of the curve, so we're gonna give it to Tiff right off the bat.
I know how this rolls. All right. So yeah, they lost 545 kids out of 1,500 because the Trump administration deported 2/3 of the parents of those kids, and it's a fiasco. That's the criticism we're levying on the Trump administration. Not just that, but
But as we agreed, I'm sorry. I apologize. I shouldn't have done it.
And I mean, you can argue that Biden's detention facilities are only marginally better than Trump's. Like I said, I still don't like detention centers, but at least Biden's detention facilities on shoving all the kids in one giant room surrounded by fencing, sleeping on dirt, getting physically abused by the staff like they were under the Trump administration.
How do you know that?
Well,
you mean? How do I know things that are like well documented and written on, like news? like facts. Like
You're
data.
talking about
Really?
you're talking about DHS
Yeah.
facilities. You're talking about CBP facilities. Those facilities are only meant to house kids and people for like 72 hours until they're processed into another facility that's run by HHS, where there's more space, where they have access to education, where they have access to legal counsel, that kind of thing. It's not like those facilities with with chain link fencing just went away. They're still there. In fact, they're at incredible capacity right now because we are facing a surge.
And
that
under
is
the
happening.
current Biden administration, they're also violating that 72-hour reason for that exact same reason. So are we going to hold the same standard to both parties?
There
I
was
mean,
a
yeah. If they're like held there and they're treated like crap and they're getting assaulted by the employees, then Biden and his administration should be held to the same standard.
The extra time that you're talking about, there was a report that came out recently that said that they were keeping kids on average 5 hours longer than the 72 hours. I want to live in a world where they don't have to wait longer than a few hours, but we are facing an incredible surge right now at our southern border, and Biden inherited the infrastructure that he did. So what possible solution could we have besides just investing more money, opening more facilities, this kind of thing?
Would be my solution.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that either, but unfortunately,
get those kids off the dirt.
Unfortunately, the more expensive facilities cost a lot more money, and that would require Congress and the executive branch to allocate more funds to this. And we're currently going through other really high priorities. So it's like, you guys are wanting to really throw all this money at all these different problems. It's like we have financial limitations, guys.
No,
we can't just.
That's literally what the government does. The government throws money at different problems,
right?
And creates programs to do that. So
yeah, it's not like they can't afford it. They can, and you gotta. I always find it funny when conservatives
we have to borrow $1.9 trillion of additional deficit spending just to get the American Rescue Plan.
Are we sure that that's the American Rescue Plan, or is that the tax cut that Trump did last a few years ago? I'm confused.
No, this new bill that's going through Congress is supposed to cost like $1.9 trillion.
Interesting.
I always find it interesting
No,
that
I wasn't in
conservatives
favor of
care
the
about
deficit
spending
spending during
when
Trump
it's a
either.
Democrat in charge, but when it's not a Democrat in
Do
charge,
you
they
think
don't
that
give
the
a
tax
fuck.
cut
They'll
bill-
spend like crazy.
So pass a
There's a
pass
million
a
different
wealth
examples
tax
of
will
the
be
same with
cool.
you guys, so it doesn't matter.
If you want to
Everybody's
make this into a broader hypocrisy question, do you think the tax cut was justified or not?
I honestly haven't prepped to answer that question.
Yeah, let's not divert too much. I mean, we can get on this for a little bit if it's just that, but we should probably get back to the immigration topic.
It seems to me like we should be focusing on getting them out of getting them through the process faster, right? They're unaccompanied children.
Yes.
I don't see any reason they should have to stay in a facility for really any amount of time at all. Figure out what's going to happen to these children and get it to happen sooner, right? If you're going to release them to someone in America, you have to vet them first. Come up with a process so that you can vet them before the kids show up on the border, right?
You can't do that because you don't know who the kids are until they've shown up.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, but presumably the people who are they have relatives in America who are expecting them. Could we, if we're going to be releasing them,
as
They still
American in
have to
terms
be
of paperwork.
vetted, though.
Maybe.
yeah.
No,
So
and maybe you could have a special immigration process for people who are saying, "Hey, this kid's going to cross illegally tomorrow or something." Maybe, yeah.
Right. If you know that if they cross illegally, they're going to be let in, then just legalize it and come up with a process so they don't have to be held.
An illegal crossing app. Oh wait.
If we allocate
an
more
app for that?
resources to vetting people faster, then I agree we can get them out faster and in a safe manner.
Yeah.
Well, and that's really going to be the test of the Biden administration, I think. I think at this present moment, they're dealing with whatever resources they currently have available to them. But when you think about how they evolve our immigration policy over time, the measure of success is going to be reducing the amount of time that kids have to spend in these temporary facilities. And the more we can streamline that process of vetting their potential sponsors, ensuring that they're going with family members, that's really going to be the measure of success for President Biden.
Then I definitely
Now, if I may just kind of
go ahead, KOE.
I was just going to say, if I may inject something that is addressing this topic we're discussing here, and also the bird walk here, just for a second. It's kind of a broad addressing. Democrats, everything you're doing going forward has a very, very, very big opportunity cost. Tick-tock goes the clock. You have 22 months left until you lose the House of Representatives. Nancy Pelosi is already preemptively stepping down at the end of the term, just like Paul Ryan did when he knew he was going to lose the House in a couple of years. And so if you put forward some sort of mass immigration reform, well, you might not have enough time to get through healthcare. If you push through some sort of gun control bill, well, now you might not have enough time to get voting rights in. So I'm telling you, you have a very limited time until the Republicans take back the House of Representatives and possibly the Senate. So tick-tock goes the clock, Democrat. You got 22 months.
Let me just say, I think it's way too premature to make midterm predictions. Way too premature.
It's been 2 months.
Right. But that's what it's been 2 months. Number one. Number two, Biden is stepping in.
Same thing.
Biden is beginning his presidency by drastically improving vaccination rates. So the COVID mess is going to gradually get more and more under control as more people get vaccinated, which will have a positive effect on the economy. George W. Bush expanded his majority in the House and the Senate in 2002 because of extenuating circumstances back then. There was a lot of patriotism and nationalism, but this is something.
Republicans turn out in midterms.
So do Democrats. Look at 2018.
2018 would like to have.
What do you mean? We crushed
where
it.
Republicans expanded their majority in the Senate. Yeah, that was a bang up year for the Dems.
Yeah, and pooped your pants in the
House.
House.
I head on that one too much.
Democrats were massively on defense in 2018. Republicans are massively on defense in 2020, and the economy is going to get better.
Okay, give me a moment here before SocDoneLeft goes. Tiff, you rose your hand.
Yeah.
And I got you down, Turk. Don't worry.
Well, I do agree with a lot of what Hutch said, and I do think it's a little premature, KOE. I have to admit that in 2 months, Biden has nixed the $15 minimum wage bill. He has bombed Syria, and he has this detention facility fiasco going on. So it is not looking great for Biden. And I've said it numerous times. Biden, to me, is he's not a leftist. He's center right. He's basically a moderate Republican and all but party name.
What?
So I'm not. Yeah. I'm surprised.
What?
No. Yeah.
Sorry,
if you disagree with that, then. But yeah. So KOE does have some points there, even though I hate to admit it.
Can you explain to me where Biden and moderate Republicans line up on policy? Is it his climate change bill? Or is
no.
Or is it his immigration policy? Or is it his tax policy? Is it where does he line up?
No,
which one of his policies most resemble Republicans?
It's not the policies he's like pushing per se. It's the ones that he won't push. For example, Medicare for all, the $15 minimum wage, a lot of things that actual leftists want, and like even people who are progressive like AOC and stuff want. And Biden is, I don't know, of an older dinosauric era. Like a Jurassic era of the Democratic Party, where he.
Well, not being a leftist does not make you a moderate Republican. Just for the record,
he says he's a moderate, like he's a leftist, but he's not. All his policies he pushes are right leaning, and the few crumbs we get are not what leftists are asking for.
All his policies are left leaning.
Oh, he also took away relieving student loan debt from those who have it, even though he did promise on the campaign that he would eliminate at least some student loan debt, which is
he did not say
that I was going to sting.
Well, Hutch, you wanted to respond to that?
He did not say that he's opposed to canceling any student loan debt. He said he's opposed to opposing $50,000.
Oh, that makes it so much better. What a leftist, a trooper.
Of course it does. $10,000.
What's really interesting here?
What do you mean?
We're spending all this time like fighting amongst each other, and then there's people here who presumably are totally okay with voting for the Republican candidate who wouldn't have done a cent of any of this.
Right. Oh, no, I agree. It's better than what Trump would have done.
He's not going to do a cent of it.
Give us a moment here.
So do you prefer?
Okay, finish talk. You were going to go over. Then we got to go over to Turk because I wrote his name down. Okay, Turk. Your turn.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out that Trump did end his separation of minors from children in June 2018. So
after crazy amounts of public pressure, after an insane amount of public pressure, he did it because he had to, because people were like marching in the streets.
That's why we're applying pressure to Biden now.
Hey, I lit a fire and then I threw a bucket of water on it, and you want me to give credit for
the analogy I was going to give is if I shit on your carpet and I picked it up.
Right, like.
Yeah.
just like, I'm not gonna feel better because you took a dump on the carpet, but then like were later forced to pick it up and throw it in a trash can. You still took a dump on the carpet. Like, I'm not gonna give him any points.
Okay. Well, then I expect all of y'all to be consistent and keep holding Biden against the fire on this one, because he is continuing
Have
a
you
lot
seen
of
leftist Twitter?
I know, right?
Well, let's let Turk finish. Let's let Turk finish. Okay, he hasn't talked in a while.
I'm done.
You good?
Well, it's just like
Okay.
if you look at leftist Twitter, they are certainly not happy with Biden. Like I think that this idea that there's this big hypocrisy, it just doesn't seem to work when there's people who are constantly attacking Biden. I think Hutch literally had a conversation about this like a week ago or something.
With Mike from PA.
You got to turn your mic up, Hutch. I can't
Yeah.
hear you, dude, and you're jacked up 200%.
I can't turn it up anymore. I can scream into the mic if you want, but this is as high as it goes.
Now, if I may, it's just something I'd like to kind of get in on the side, because we're talking about, is this hypocritical? Is that hypocritical? Are you a hypocrite for this? Are you a hypocrite for that? I'm curious. I kind of noticed this in politics, and I'm curious what the panel's thoughts are on this. I have never, ever in all my life persuaded someone or got them to change their mind by saying, oh, you hypocrite. Don't you know you're a hypocrite? You hypocrite, you. Don't you know how hypocritical this is? Never happened once for me. Has that happened to any of you? I'm just kind of curious.
I mean, that's a fair point. Then we could pivot to talking about the merits of their relative immigration policies, the Dems and the Republicans. Since the conservatives in the room seem to want to defend Donald Trump as being maligned by the media, we could talk about the Republican Party's policy on immigration more broadly.
Well, it's not so much about
Yeah,
malign.
you're not going to persuade a lot of people doing
consistent
that.
standards.
You keep
We're
talking
not
about
gonna persuade you
consistent.
by talking about how the party you vote for has shit policies.
I
You
mean,
keep talking
also, if you
about
wanna talk
consistent.
about what changes people's mind. The actual like psychological phenomenon of changing your mind doesn't happen in an epiphany moment. It's not going to happen in one time. So like, I feel like even debating
Kind of how
that
persuasion
point
works.
is absurd. No, that's how neurology works.
You gotta plant
Okay.
seeds, KOE,
No,
and those
that's how-
seeds grow.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
no,
and
you
when
do have to
the
persuade
seeds
people
keep
with your
being
words. They
planted
do
that
have
I'm
to
an
actually
idiot.
change their
Okay,
minds.
so I would like to say that I feel like we've gotten very off topic from immigration. So I'm going to say.
What?
I mean,
I'm gonna
I would like
go
to
in the
address what
abstract.
SocDem said.
I would. Okay, you can address what SocDem said.
Yeah. So let's talk immigration policy. I think this would be actually a great opportunity for
Do we
some
want to do that?
compromise to
Sorry to
happen.
interrupt.
Do we want to talk policy?
I'm just asking, like, it's kind of your show.
I mean, it kind of
Yeah,
talks about
I mean,
what we're
that
going
would,
about
that'd
right
be
now.
good if we talked policy.
Like,
Okay.
I think it would be a great opportunity to increase additional funding for these border operations to purchase additional properties or lease additional land for, surge locations and stuff. But, if you're going to give a little, you got to take, or if you're going to take a little, you got to give a little, right? That's this whole, negotiation process. But I unfortunately don't think there's much room for wiggling when it comes to immigration policies, when it comes to the left. I would love to hear something that the left is willing to negotiate or back down on a little bit when it comes to immigration policy.
I mean, I don't like using unaccompanied minors as a bargaining chip. They're going to show up at our border in the tens of thousands regardless. So we need proper facilities. So if you're proposing,
right, and I'm
to
saying
like,
let's allocate more
he's
money to
wanting greater
house
security.
these people.
I'm totally down with that, but I'm just saying.
So what
like,
are you
using,
willing to sacrifice to do that?
But this
from
is
an
what I'm
Yeah,
saying.
ideologically, there has to be a compromise here. Like, because we've got two irretractable sides that both think my way or the highway, and I'm 100% right. And what we've got this gentleman
Whoa.
here saying is we might need to find some kind of compromise. Everyone's not going to get everything they want out of this. That's
Well, what do
kinda
you
how
what do you
that works.
what do you propose?
I know,
The
crazy.
question is to you.
Did
I'm
it-
willing to increase budgetary standards for acquiring more land and more people to help process these people faster so that they get under the 72 hours. What is a policy with immigration that the left is willing to negotiate with and sacrifice in order to get that funding?
What do you propose?
That's not my question. That's what are you willing to propose?
It depends. It depends on what you want. I mean, maybe, but I really have no idea what
Can
you
we
want.
can we finish the border wall?
No.
Oh, because
Fuck
it's
that.
been proven to be useless.
Wait,
there's
if we
not
care
gonna
so
be-
much
Worked in
about
California this
listen-
past week where that
the
one
left
van
isn't
ran
interested
into
in
it and
trading
ended up
horses.
You
killing it.
can
Comes to
you can finish
negotiations.
the border wall, but then the minute wind comes by, it'll just knock it the fuck over again.
Okay,
so
so
sure,
when
you
illegals
finish your
try
border
to
wall.
cross it and they run
so
into a
why do we
different
care so much
van.
about
Okay,
fiscal
okay.
responsibility,
There you go.
except for like the border wall, which
Right.
is apparently just like a big symbolic thing?
It
Why do
was-
we give a shit?
Well, it's
It
not.
was
It's
an
part
example of an
overall.
No,
option.
that
for-
is
Okay, wait, give me a
symbolic.
second. Give me a
It's-
second. Give me a second. Dronetek hasn't said anything in a while, so I wanted like Dronetek have
I-
to speak on this.
No, I'm just saying the wall is not useless. It's good to have a wall on along with other things. I mean, look at DC right now. You guys are cool with that, right?
Okay,
Oh my
so
Christ.
What's that for? What's
Oh,
all
you
that
mean
fencing
after an
around DC for?
insurrection?
sure, let's do a
DC
trade.
Oh
Let's
yeah, an
just go to
insurrection of
border
people
wall.
with flagpoles. Okay,
The
let's get into that
difference is-
debate.
The difference is the wall in DC isn't harming the environment, which the wall at the southern border has been proven to be
Oh,
harming the environment.
Right.
You also
Yeah,
don't
they're
have
not
to
gonna
claim,
put it over,
It's
like-
different
environment
when
of
they do
West
it.
Texas. Okay.
you also don't have
if
to
I may,
claim.
folks, if I may, the reason why people are advocating for things like the wall or pretty much anything like that is it's the theory of friction. Wherever you add friction to anything in life, you will get less of it. Where you pull friction away, you will get more of it. The best example of this is taxation. Where you tax something more, you are adding friction and you will get less of that behavior. Where you drop taxes, you are actually getting less friction and you will get more of that behavior. And so what this is an attempt to add friction to the idea of coming across the border illegally, incentivizing legal crossing. Now, you can agree with it, you can disagree with it, but that is the basic way that the world works, is how much friction is applied to different aspects of our lives.
Sure,
The,
we could also, instead of applying friction to one area to make it really difficult to get in the United States, we could lubricate another area, right, and make it really easy to get into the United States by streamlining the process to get into the United States, so people don't have to get in illegally in the first place. Then we wouldn't have to
Lube
build a
the
damn wall,
border.
we'd save the money, and more people would come in.
That, if we
Yeah,
had
the
an
border.
actual objective, measurable, verifiable system where people could move freely, yeah, that's not a problem. We don't have that right now. And to me, I think the bigger problem is nobody really ever talks about addressing why are people leaving their home in droves. These are places that are paradises, but they are political basket cases. And so that's the reason why people are coming here. And that's the really unfortunate reality, because yeah, the places, especially from pretty much Mexico on south, I mean, those just, God, some of the most beautiful places you could ever lay eyes on. And so it really is, why don't we address that problem? And
So
we've
what-
got a hand up.
Actually, no, I totally
Let's
agree
hear
with
it.
you. Why don't we
You
just
seem
put
very
Google-
eager to talk. I want to hear it.
Here, yeah. No, so I mean, would you like to know why those countries are having a real tough time? That is the legacy of long-term colonialism by America when we go in and rape them of resources, or we depose of a regime that we don't see as favorable to the American government and American business interests, and thus we leave the country in turmoil. And then so it's, you know, what's interesting is that this situation, and especially in a lot of those countries in Central, I'm still fucking talking, shut the fuck up. I like the reason we have this situation a lot in Central America is directly because of involvement from the United States. And that's we're kind of now reaping what we sow, because the reason these people are displaced, the reason that it's so dangerous there for them, is directly because of our shit. So we owe, like, we bear responsibility with this.
Maddy,
keep in
can I ask
mind-
you
Drugs.
one
You
second.
didn't mention drugs
I
a
wanted,
lot.
well,
Like, that
give
seems to be a big problem.
me a moment. Maddie, just for chat, I think it'd be good for chat. What are some like examples of American foreign involvement in these countries that have like caused the situation?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, there is a situation from, God, like decades ago in Guatemala where we essentially
Jacobo
like went
Arbenz.
in and, I'm sorry, Hutch, what'd you say?
Jacobo Arbenz was the guy's name in Guatemala.
That's right.
Sorry.
Yeah, and so, and like this also isn't new, by the way. The United States has been getting involved with countries not only in Central America, but also in the Caribbean and South America. And it has everything to do from extracting resources that those countries have. And then when those countries potentially try to make it so that those within their community are the ones that benefit from the wealth being generated, instead of it being exported out to American business interests, that's when the U.S. steps in and then tries to depose a dictator or tries to make a situation more favorable for specific businesses. I'm trying to think if there's like a fruit company that was prolific with this, and I'm blanking on the name.
Banana Republic. Are you thinking of that thing?
I think it was a few.
There was a few, but there was a few that like are great examples of that. And then of course now what we're seeing, at least with U.S. interests, are with oil and petroleum. And I know in Brazil a long time ago, rubber was another very lucrative resource that the United States was looking to extract.
Drugs is a big problem too.
So, yeah, I was just about to say that another reason isn't just Americans, even though we're a big influence over there. A lot of the drug cartels down in Mexico have a strong foothold in Mexico, making it unsafe, which is a lot of the reasons people come up and migrate in the first place. Drug cartels control almost as much territory in Mexico as the Islamic State controlled in Syria at the height of its power. So that's a huge issue as well. So the fact that they want to escape the murder and mayhem and the lawlessness is not a surprise to me. Secondly, to the Turk, I thought we already agreed earlier that, like, we're not talking about technically the southern border. We're talking about the detention centers. I thought we already agreed that we should expand the centers, make them better, and get more people through. So what are you asking for more? That seems like a really good suggestion. We all agreed. So what are you looking for?
Right, but I mean, if this is going to be new legislation, it's going to be new funds generated in order to fund these things. They've got to come from somewhere, or it's just going to be another, X amount of dollars that's going to go towards the budget, right?
But didn't you just complain about money a minute ago, and then you immediately went to, how about we finish the border wall? I mean, that makes no sense.
That was purely an example, because I know y'all guys hate the border wall. There's other immigration options, like trying to more effectively find people that outstay their visas, that we need to get, execute that law. There's other parts of the border policy that can be enhanced, and I'm curious what kind of discussions can be happening other than saying we got to kowtow to every left-leaning idea, because what I heard Maddy say was just open the border, let everyone across, and SocDone is nodding. So it's like, okay, at what point do I get any kind of say in this? It looks like I don't.
At some point, I would like to just have open borders, but it's not going to happen for a long time, maybe not even during my lifetime. And that, that's the goal. But as of right now, we live in a capitalist society. We have an immigration system that's we can't just let people in willy-nilly. So the best idea I can think of is what we're doing now, except make it as comfy as possible, make more facilities, get the process out faster. And in regards to visas, that's like a whole different story. I'm specifically talking about the children.
Okay, next we have SocDoneLeft and KOE. Then we're gonna actually probably move on to the next topic, because this one seems to be slowing down.
Cool.
Sure. So I guess the basic take is I wanted to mention drugs as well, because I think the fundamental question is who's buying those drugs. One of the same reasons that people immigrate is the same reason that drugs flow north. There's more money up north for drugs. There's more money up north for jobs. So the part of the reason that all these countries have all these cartels is because they've had to create this enormous illegal system, because the United States has forced its drug war policy onto other countries as well as having internally. So I think that there's a variety of instability factors that we've added to all of these countries by intervening in them, by violating their democracies, by a variety of economic institutions, and then also directly by imposing laws which create these enormous extra legal powers which destroy law and order and destroy people's trust in the government, which force people to flee and so on. So I think the simple answer here, is, again, it seems like a shift to the left of either you've got to win the war on drugs, you've got to go so far right that somehow you win it, and I don't know if we've ever seen an example of that, or you've got to admit that it's failed and go back and start ramping down the war on drugs. Simple as.
Okay, next is KOE.
Folks, when we're talking about why are people fleeing these conditions, we've heard a lot of rather odd, we're talking about fruit companies from the 80s and all these kind of very strange explanations. And we're forgetting something very simple that just happened in our recent events. In mid-October of 2019, the Mexican government was bested in open battle by Mexican drug cartels. So they're dealing with that kind of a basket case of political economy, and we're wondering why people might want to get away from that. And so it is the political basket case that is causing all of these problems. And so we don't really have a war on drugs anymore. What we have is a drug war on the southern border, and people are actually being killed from it. And this is one of the reasons why in 2016 Donald Trump won, and it's why the Republicans are able to brand themselves as security, protection, self-defense, border security, national security. These are the ways that they brand themselves, because it is successful, because it has a pull. People are persuaded. And so, what's that, sir?
If you're advocating for legalizing drugs, I don't think probably anyone on this panel is going to disagree with you there. But you can't minimize the destabilizing effect that American imperialism all throughout the 70s, 80s, 90s in Central America persists to
Drugs
this day.
is way worse. The demand for drugs is just outweighs that in any kind of way. We could say some imperialism from some past decade. The actual demand for cocaine in Dallas right now has way more to do with any kind of political basket case.
Let's
People
decriminalize
from
drugs.
down south are having to deal with it.
Let's
So the
decriminalize
idea
drugs.
that it-
Let's go. Let's do
No,
it. I'm down. Yeah.
At this point,
I'm
like,
down
I
too.
don't really.
So
What's there to
I've got
really win with doing this war on drugs anymore? It is an objective failure. I'm not going to actually deny that, but I'm saying that like we're getting some very odd explanations when the most obvious one is just staring us in the face.
It's not odd.
You know, these lips, they can't speak any evil. But with that, I yield back to all you beautiful people.
Okay,
so here's my last thing. So policy, can we decriminalize drugs and increase funding for immigration facilities across the border, but we build the wall?
No, you don't get the wall.
If I have to, sure.
You don't get it.
This guy, this
take the bullet.
motherfucker's spitting.
I'll take the bullet. I'll pay $15 billion for your big symbolic wall if we can decriminalize literally all the drugs and get like a fucking amnesty for 11 million people. I'll take it. It's worth it.
I'm absolutely on board with this. I will go on record.
I say no.
Wall
I say no. You don't get your fucking wall.
It was
Until
here
you
on
have
the
a
Dylan
policy.
Burns show.
We
The left
build
and right
the wall
came together.
with the drugs. Sorry.
drug money. Ooh, that
I
sounds
say,
good.
I say
Build
we
the wall
legalize
with
all
the
drugs.
Guys,
and
that's
we don't
capitalism.
build
We
the wall.
fund the wall with the drug money.
As
No,
long
no,
as
you
you're
just
gonna be charging
literally
some
use
people-
bricks of
I'm
heroin
happy
to
we've
build
come
the wall.
together to find out that we should fund the border wall with cocaine money. We've come to a conclusion here. Now
No, you stack bags
It's
of
the
cocaine on
obvious
top of each
answer.
other and then use that
Yeah.
as the physical wall, I think is what she was
Yeah,
saying. Which
See,
I'm
Hutch
down
gets
for.
it. Hutch gets it.
And to KOE, we've just come to a policy agreement on the Dylan Birds podcast. That's like worth 10 subs in chat, right?
of course,
Come
always.
on, what are you doing, folks?
So
Sure.
we're
Like,
going to
share,
move.
subscribe, sub. Oh,
We're going to move on to the next topic, but everybody's going to have an outro period. We can have a short outro to say what you've taken from the conversation and restate your position or address anything you want to. So I'm going to start in the top left-hand corner with Hutch.
Yeah, so I think I don't know. I think I said everything I need to say. I would push back against the idea that there's any kind of an equivalence between Biden's immigration policy and Trump's. They could not be more different. In many ways, they're completely opposite. So I don't know how to address concerns of consistency when applying the same standards to each administration that comes, when the policy that we have right now looks absolutely nothing like what we had just 3 months ago. So that's going to do it for me.
Okay. I'm going to throw it over to Maddy.
Yeah, I think what we're seeing is the Biden administration using the resources available to them. And the real test of success for the new administration is going to be how they streamline the process to ensure that all accompanied minors that show up at the border are safe, that when they go into the care of a guardian or family member, that person has been thoroughly vetted, and that the process then for entering into our society is as stress-free as possible, because I can only imagine the process of them making the journey to come here seeking a better life has been hell as it is, the least we could do, especially considering our role over, like our historical role in destabilizing their home countries, could be maybe we can start to make amends by welcoming in those folks as refugees and integrating them fully into our society and giving them a chance to be successful.
I just want to thank chat for starting that already through a level 5 hype train. I really want to thank Leah, Too Drunk to Play, everybody in chat who's gifting subs right now. I really appreciate that. And I also want to say, I've just gotten a message from Vosh we're going to read on stream in a little bit after these outros. So we're going to throw it over to Turk next. The Hippy Dippy champion currently sent out a message. So I'm going to throw it over to Turk now.
Yeah, so to the topic that we were supposed to be talking about, I agree with a lot of you guys. It's like I have compassion for these people that are wanting to cross the border. America is a good place to be. There's a lot of opportunity here. There is significantly better qualities of life. However, I would like there to be consistency in our border policy. And unfortunately, by rescinding a lot of the Trump era border stuff, you can agree or disagree with it however you want. That is causing this influx of people coming to the border, and that is what's currently causing the current issue. So it's like you can't blame everything on Trump here. Biden kind of opened the floodgates, and this is what happens when you have a great place and people want to come here. So I want to make better facilities to put these migrant children and have them housed and treated for. It's it's unfortunate,
Okay, now we're going to throw the next person. We're not going to throw the person. We're going to throw it over to Tiffany.
I'm actually pleasantly surprised that we've all agreed on more than I thought we would. We've agreed that we should have more centers that are better, not just better staffed, but bigger areas and nicer for the children. That we should get them vetted faster. Not them, but the guardians vetted faster. Get them in and out quicker. So I'm pretty surprised. I thought this would be a more contentious argument. It was so non-contentious. We had to argue about other stuff that wasn't even related to the topic for most of it. I do think it's funny because I thought I'd be one of the few people with this position on the left, but apparently a lot of the people on the left agreed with me. I do think that if the right really wants to stop the inflow of immigration to the point where it's coming at such a rapid pace, we should legalize all drugs. I think that'd be pretty base. If you're against that, then what Biden is doing right now is, I think, the best we can do, at least at the moment.
Okay, next is going to go over to Dronetek. Dronetek, that's an amazing point. It'd be even better if I could hear it.
It was the meaning of life. We missed it.
I still can't hear it, actually.
He has us on mute too, so it's a
son of a biscuit.
I have you on mute.
Now, there we go.
You guys hear me? I have no idea why it's not working. Sorry about that. This happens every stream. Yeah, there's not a lot to disagree with. Like everybody's talked about already. None of us want anything bad to happen to these kids. We want people to come here. I just worry that lots of money is going to other things, not Americans. I worry that you guys want to open borders. What's the benefits of that? I don't see any benefits. You're worried. Star, you said you're worried that we're a capitalist country. Is that it? Or were you just mentioning that we're capitalist? So, I don't see that as a problem. A lot of these people are fleeing countries that aren't capitalist. That's why they're coming here. It's a better country. And I also worry that a lot of the people that feign all this compassion for these people, it's really they have ulterior motives. They see unending power and one party rule for the foreseeable future. So I have other concerns. You guys act like there's nothing, no negatives in all this. You don't even want to look at it. If you look at it, you're racist. There's no problems with these countries or the governments themselves. It's all America's fault. It's just there's not a lot of good faith in this argument, and I don't have a lot of faith that it's going to be solved. It's just we're going to keep bickering. Like we agree here, but when it comes to actual Congress, they'll never agree. So
wonderful. We're going to throw it over to Socialism Done Left.
Sure. I mean, I guess I'd give summary of the take I gave at the beginning, which is that big change from Trump to Biden is the shift from mostly CBP detention being like one of the big issues, that being less of an issue. It's currently an issue because of large influx. Someone was mentioning that Biden brought this upon themselves by changing the policy. That policy would not have had to have changed unless it hadn't been there in the first place. So there was only a surge because the policy which enabled the surge wasn't there before. So if the idea is simply that like Trump had shit policy and then it's bad that Biden changed it because temporarily we're going to have an issue, maybe Trump shouldn't have done it in the first place. This is just a silly argument. However, in general, there have been mostly improvements on immigration policy, not as much as I'd like, but like the shift towards like now it's just unaccompanied minors. In general, there have been a lot of good shifts. They haven't been as far as I'd like, which is understandable for Biden. That's about it.
KOE, yeah, you're next.
Well, thank you, sir. This has been quite an interesting discussion. And Tiffany Starr, you're saying, well, I'm shocked we haven't had a lot of disagreement. Well, maybe that's just because I'm just so persuasive. Yes. So we've all come together, folks. We've all agreed on some policy here. We've agreed we'll build the wall in exchange for decriminalizing drugs, better facilities. And in my opinion, the thing that we really need is just greater transparency. You all can always benefit from a little bit better transparency in whatever particular area of life you're talking. So that has been a great concession. We've come together here. And as I've said, folks, this is something that nobody likes, nobody wants, but adult decisions sometimes do not. There is no perfect decision that's good. There's just decisions that are less bad. And we have taken this particular perspective because, as we stated at the beginning, there is a hell of a lot worse choices we could make with some god-awful outcomes, the likes of which I don't even want to speak upon this station. So something to keep in mind, folks. This is not good. This is a less than perfect situation, and I wish it was better. Nirvana is not for this world, and we will try to do better with each passing day. And with that, I yield it back to you, beautiful people.
Wonderful. We're going to throw it over to last username next. You haven't had much time to talk, so if you want some extra time here, that's fine.
Sure. So ending the war on drugs will definitely improve this situation. However, there's always going to be some failed states south of the border, and there's always going to be people who want to go in to enter the United States desperately. We can see that now. Seems like we have situations where people are literally willing to just send their children, like leaving their baby in a basket on America's doorstep, and like, please take, like they're that desperate in some cases. So, and it seems to me you need to decide who you're going to let in and who you're not going to let in. And then you need to streamline the system to figure that out as efficiently as possible, to let the people in as quickly as possible. And the people you're not going to let in, you need to send them away as quickly as possible. You have to make that decision and send them in the direction you're going to send them. Keeping them in facilities, no matter how nice those facilities are, is not a solution to anything, right? You can't do that. So like funding the facilities more should be a last resort for where you're sending your funding. Like sending your funding to making the system more efficient and processing people faster is obviously going to be much better than just making the facilities nicer or bigger so that you can, imprison more people. This is not a good situation. Now, my personal favorite policy would be just let everybody in, open border, just for the record, but I know that's not feasible. So barring that, you just have to decide who you're going to let in, decide who you're not going to let in, and just do that as quickly as possible. Yeah, that's it.
I just want to say thank you to Leah for dropping hundreds upon hundreds of dollars of subs in chat. I really appreciate it. If you are intoxicated, message me after stream and we'll try to work something out afterwards, okay? I really appreciate it. We're going to go on to the next topic, which is everyone's favorite topic, foreign policy. Biden recently, after 3 separate strikes on American complexes in Syria, one on in the green zone near the embassy, another one near an airstrip, and a third one, which I'm trying to take time to remember, from organizations like Kataib Hezbollah, Biden ended up ordering an airstrike on the Syrian-Iraqi border within Syrian territory. It has been a topic of much discussion. So, what do we all think of Biden's drone strike? And if you want to, generally, Biden's foreign policy going forward. I'm going to start in the top left-hand corner with Hutch.
Yeah, I mean, on this topic, I'm more curious to hear what you guys have to say. Like, obviously, I think most Americans at this point are concerned with broad executive authority when it comes to drone strikes and whatnot. However, I don't know how many Americans are going to lose sleep over bombing an Iranian-backed militia on the Syrian-Iraqi border. It was also reported today, and it was sort of like ridiculed, mocked by a lot of leftists on Twitter, but that there was a second strike that was also being planned, but he called it off because he saw a mother and her child in that area, and he didn't want any civilian casualties. So, yeah, I think I'll save it for the. I'll save anything else for the rest of the discussion.
Great. Next is going to be Maddy.
Yeah. So, it's interesting, like, because I've heard the rationale for why these targets were included as part of this operation, but at the end of the day, my concern is on the executive branch overstepping bounds on what they're able to do without authorization from Congress. I mean, if we think about it, like, the administration's actions are illegal under United States law and under international law. They don't have any authorization of military force to go into Syria. And the main point here is that the reason we did that was to dissuade these Iranian-backed militias who were targeting U.S. Locations in Iraq. And so this was sort of to dissuade further aggression. But, like, the fact is that maximum pressure campaign hasn't worked. And repeating this continued strategy not only has implications for our staying entangled in the Middle East, it hasn't even helped with our stated objectives, which is to de-escalate aggression in that area. So it's, again, like, yeah, admittedly, international relations isn't really my strong suit, but, like, from what I can tell, I have some concerns with the president's decision to authorize this operation without congressional approval.
Okay. We're going to throw it over next to TheTerk.
Yeah, so as a conservative, I support our troops and I support our commander-in-chief and what he needs to do to secure and protect American assets abroad. And if they deemed that necessary, I think it's not within my reason to tell him to not do what he was elected to do. But I'm more interested in seeing the left kind of tear themselves apart on this one because, like Maddy said, that's executive branch overreaching their directive. But on the other hand, you want people to pull out of the Middle East. So I'm really interested in why we're still funding the military industrial complex here and why that's not getting dismantled as we speak.
Okay. Next, I'm going to throw it over to Tiffany.
Foreign policy isn't my strong suit, but let's just lay out the facts that we know, or at least I know. Biden ordered an airstrike on Syrian buildings the Pentagon claimed was used by Iranian-backed militias in retaliation for the bombing of a U.S.-led military base in Kurdish. I'm pretty sure it's Kurdish. At least 22 people were killed in the bombing, all of whom, at least as far as I've read, were from an umbrella force that included many small militias from Iran. Pentagon chief spokesperson John Kirby stated that the strike was sent as a message that Biden will protect America and the coalition personnel. We have acted in a deliberate manner that aims to de-escalate the overall situation in eastern Syria and Iraq, end quote. Because nothing says de-escalate like dropping bombs on people. It's worth noting that Biden did call off a second Syrian strike due to the possibility of civilian casualties. So, yeah, way to show restraint, Biden. Given that this strike was a strike specifically attacking a military base and that as far as we know, no civilian targets were hit, does that justify the attack? I would argue no. I don't think we should be over there, period. I'm not a fan of the America is the world's policed mentality. I wasn't a fan of Trump greenlighting drone strikes. I wasn't a fan of Obama doing it, and I'm not a fan of Biden doing it, especially less than 2 months into his presidency. As long as America has a presence in the Middle East, these attacks will not stop. Therefore, retaliation is not how we solve this problem. Constant involvement in that part of the world produces nothing but blood and capital to fill defense contractors' coffers. What America needs to do is pull out like I do in my adult films.
Okay. I don't usually do this, but I will say, I just want to make clear to everybody in chat that these are not Iranian militias or Iranian groups. They are backed by Iran. They are not from Iran. They are from Iraq and Syria.
That is what I meant, not
Okay.
my strong suit.
Okay. I'm going to throw it over to Dronetek. I cannot hear you.
I need to change this to
Voice to tech.
I'm sorry. I have no idea what my problem is tonight with this, but Turk stole my thunder a little bit there. I agree with Biden with the strike. If the military deemed it necessary, then I back it. Although I think, what we're doing in Syria, we've been there for quite a long time now, is kind of nebulous. We don't really know what the goal is there. I think as a nation, we don't. But the one thing I would point out, and it's just kind of my, my wheelhouse, is that the media reaction is completely different. And it's to be expected. When Biden does it, it's a strong president, letting them know, like Tiffany said, it's a deterrent, let them know that we're not going to just stand by. But when Trump does it, it's this distraction. He's evil. Don't trust it. So that's all I'm going to say about it, really.
Okay, next is going to be last username.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of boggles my mind, how much I would need really make an informed judgment about an action like this, like an informative judgment to hold a leader accountable, like without the intelligence that they have and all sorts of military information. I mean, you can understand the political situation, but still, it's going to be really hard to get access to everything to know if this was the right response or if there was some other response that was possible. So yeah, like I don't know, and it's things like this that really sort of drive home just how difficult it is or just how scary it is that your leaders are bombing other countries, and even fairly intelligent people have a very difficult time even beginning to figure out how to hold them accountable for that power. So yeah, I don't know. Seems like a lot of us don't know. I'm sure Dylan does, because Dylan's a genius about that stuff. But Dylan can't run the world. So this is yeah. There you go.
Yet. I just want to prefix that with yet. He can't run the world yet. Okay. And also, I just want to make clear to chat, because chat keeps asking me. I have not publicly revealed my position on this because I thought this would be a good experiment to let people research on their own in my community, which has turned out to be a complete failure. I've been extremely disappointed in the results of letting you guys try to make your decision. I did a poll yesterday, like, okay, guys, I just explained to you every detail about this situation without giving you my opinion and giving you the different perspectives. What's your opinion on a strike? And it literally hit 50-50. Like, they couldn't even make up their mind. They just couldn't. They had one shot and they just completely messed it up. So my opinion of chat has once again been destroyed. I just want to make that clear for chat.
Can you blame them though? Can you blame them?
So
just let me bully chat, okay? Don't give them sympathy, last username. That's okay.
It's okay, chat.
I know you
love
believe in the non-aggression principle, but come on. Okay, we're gonna go through to KOE.
NAP, it's for you and for me. But folks, it took Joseph Biden less than 50 days to inject our nation into a new war. It took him less than 50 days to pick up where the neocons had left off. We have now bombed a new nation and injected ourselves into a new war. And one of the most concerning parts of it is no member of our government has even made a passing attempt at giving us a usable, valuable value proposition for why we are doing this. We're not on the verge of speaking Syrian. There isn't any good reason to inject us into a new war. There will always be a problem in some particular corner. But we need to find a way to pull back the dogs of war. And unfortunately, Joe Biden has let them off the leash. And we're doing this in a nation that has been at civil war for over a decade. What are we hoping to accomplish? Bomb their piles of rubble into slightly smaller piles of rubble? There is no real value proposition why Americans need to support this. There's no reason we need to do this. We have violated the just war principle of Christianity. We have committed the violent act of invasion. And so that folks, is why I do not support this action. I do not support any new wars. It's one of the number one reasons why I supported Donald Trump, is because he had not got us into any new wars, the first president to do so since Harding. And so we can make a lot of complaints about what he did or didn't do, should have done this, should have done that, shouldn't have done this, shouldn't have done that. No new wars. That is something valuable. And with every word in my body, I will speak against any war that I possibly can. Because as I said at the beginning, folks, I am the internet's leading shill for big peace. And with that, I go back the balance of my time.
Not a new war.
Socialism done left. Socialism done left. It's
Same
your
old
turn.
war.
Please take it. Take it. Please do it. Grab it, please.
It's been 42 days since the inauguration. I don't think we have a really good take on Biden's foreign policy yet. I think it's possible that the current example was an oversight. It seems like the strike was probably pretty well justified. I think the hatred some lefties have for drone strikes is silly. It probably would have been even dumber and worse if we did it manually. I don't know. Those are the big things. I think that we'll start to see Biden's foreign policy emerge maybe more by like half of the first year, particularly as COVID like recedes a little bit. We'll start to see what he does with the excess COVID vaccines. We'll see what he does with like continued drones, whether he like increases transparency there that Trump hid. So I don't know. I think people really like to focus on single examples and anecdotes because they make for very compelling stories, but the world is mostly borne out in statistics, and we don't have those. We don't have a broad pattern to see the lens through which Biden sees the world.
Okay, so I'm gonna say this is gonna. I might walk away a few times because again, this is a tough conversation for me to just keep my mouth shut on. So I'm gonna ask you all to do your best. Okay, do your best to be smart, be super smart, all of you, and be super educated, and don't make me cry. Okay, you may begin.
Can I just ask?
Rebel.
I'm a
Can I just
conservative. I'm not smart, right?
Can I just ask, like, what? I don't know if this is too much of a divergence from the topic here, but why does it matter if Trump didn't start any new wars? If he dropped more bombs? If we just continued the same wars that we were in? I mean, what kind of credit are we giving him for that?
He was pulling back troops. He was actually pulling down in Afghanistan and Iraq.
He didn't.
And so yes, and he was actually
He didn't do that.
wars.
He didn't do that until the end.
What's the sudden foreign policy interest you have, Hutch?
He didn't. You don't know me. Why are you assuming all these things about me?
Because
You're just
you
like
just
speaking
said-
to some caricature of the left that you have in your mind.
You just said that you
I'm
didn't
asking
have
him.
foreign
I'm asking him a
policy.
question right now. No,
You
hold
were
on.
uninterested.
I'm asking him a question right now. Can you explain the relevance of not starting new wars if we dropped more bombs over abroad? I don't know what you're talking about, like pulling troops back in Afghanistan. He didn't pull troops back until the very end of his term.
Still did it. Sorry, man. You could not
That's
like
not
it,
a
but he
valid
did actually
excuse
draw
in this
down.
conversation. I've already
Actually,
tried it.
it
It
is
doesn't
because
work.
well, I mean, I'm sorry. You guys could not like it, but I voted for the man because he was the president of peace. He didn't get us into new wars. He tried to de-escalate wherever he could. Hell, he's tried to get us peace agreements in areas of the world we
He
never
tried to
had.
de-escalate wherever he could. Can you explain that? What do you mean? He was picking fights with Kim Jong-un, like literally
He would
picking fights with
literally
him on
try
Twitter.
to. Yeah, he picked a fight with
Israeli-
Iran.
Kim Jong-un, you know that guy that he actually went to go meet in person when the
That's
two of them
good.
were actually amicably meeting? Yes, that is a
Uh,
good
which was
thing.
bad.
But
That
wait,
is
what if-
less-
Bad, remember.
we are-
Wait, why
we
is
are
that
less
good?
close to war at that point.
Yeah, how is
We are
that?
so
How is
much
that
further from
good?
going
If-
to war.
if-
It's always a good
Why?
thing. Diplomacy
We've-
better than war. Period.
Hey, maybe you should
Every day.
cut down on whatever you're drinking there, KOE.
So if Ko's sole
idea.
goal is like a retreat from the world and just like peace at any cost or whatever, then yeah, like talking with anyone and everyone, removing from everything, like that's totally good. Why didn't he do that in Iran? Why didn't he do that in other areas?
He did he
Where
helped
did we go
broker
with
the Abraham
Iran?
Accords. That's something to be proud of, right?
Okay, so he did that, right? And then he
He
also
should have been
in
like
general-
Obama and fund their terrorism. He should have done that.
We've been in Syria
I-
for a long
like
time.
Yemen?
What do you mean, like a new war?
I'm still
pulled
confused
the
about this
troops
whole
out
started
in
a new war
2018,
situation
2019.
because we've been in Syria for a while.
Yeah.
In fact, that
I
was
pulled
one
the
of
troops out
Trump's
in
first.
2018,
I'm not done. I am
2019.
not done. And one of
Yeah, you
Trump's
needed the
first
direction.
military operations was literally directing a bombing mission in Syria. So like, I'm
They pulled the troops out since.
fascinated to hear about this new war that's being started.
We
I'm
pulled the
very
troops out.
interested to
Stuff.
learn about it.
If you Google
Just explain
Biden
it.
starting war, there's nothing on it because he didn't do it. I don't know where you're getting your information. I
He
don't know if it's
just dropped
Breitbart or Newsmax or whatever,
bombs.
but
Oh my God.
but it's
You
not
know
a
that,
new
you know
war.
that strike that we were just talking
Actually,
about?
do you
Yes,
think
it's
that
intended
Harry
to-
Truman started a new war? Real quick question. No, I'm just
I-
wondering.
I
Did
don't
Harry
There's
know
a
Truman
this
start a
reason
war?
dumb
Dylan was
conservative.
cringing during your rant.
I just wanna make
It's not
sure.
because you're right.
Look, I'm not saying don't use me as a tool here, okay? I am just over here being quiet because I have many opinions about foreign policy, and being quiet during the foreign policy talk is very, very, very difficult. You guys, please return to the talk.
This wasn't even a strike on this wasn't even a strike in the context of the Syrian war. This is a strike in retaliation for one of our air bases being hit in Iraq.
Right. And there's a
But-
reason that it was sorry. Oh, sorry. You go for it.
No, sorry, go ahead.
Well, so I was saying there's also a reason that it happened in Syria. So under the Trump administration, when they retaliated against these sorts of militias, they would often do it over the Iraqi border, and they would often do it without giving the Iraqi government advance notice or cluing them into what was happening. So the reason allegedly they did this in Syria was to avoid having that sort of conflict with the Iraqi government. So yeah, like this isn't some sort of declaration of war. I mean, I don't agree with it. I question the legality of the executive branch authorizing an operation like this. However, I can understand the circumstances and context for why this happened and why it's not, like they're flying into Syria and like just bombing like non-discriminately. There's a specific reason.
And he was reportedly given a range of options, ranging from most provocative, more provocative, less provocative, least. And he picked reportedly the least provocative option here. We're talking about like bombing a facility with like militia members. He didn't bomb like a civilian area.
2 members of Hezbollah. Sorry, continue.
I also like how KOE Nation said that Trump was the president of peace, even though Trump ordered an airstrike at a Baghdad airport to kill General Soleimani. Which almost
Where was that again?
An actual
Where was that again?
In Iraq.
In Iraq, a place
in
we already
Iraq.
have war going on.
That fostered peace.
The Soleimani strike fostered peace.
The bad
Peace
guy,
did.
remember?
The guy
Is
who
that what it
massacred his own
did?
citizens. Yeah.
Really?
I want to say, folks, this is what's really
He was an
rich is,
austere
like, the
religious scholar, guys.
Is that what
Anti-war
it did?
left. It's sure come a long way since our little boy. Oh boy, that's suddenly defending airstrikes in all sorts of countries under Democrat presidents. Boy, that anti-war left, it vaporized.
I didn't.
Rationalization's a hell of a drug.
I said I want to get out of there. I didn't think he should have bombed them. I don't think we should be there. What do you mean defending them?
God bless you then.
Okay.
I'm not talking about you specifically. I'm
God
talking
bless
about the royal left.
Wasn't one of the
The
reasons
formerly
why
anti-war left that just kind of vaporized a few years ago.
wasn't one of the reasons why Syria continues to be such an unstable region in the world was because Obama didn't do more after Assad had crossed that red line of using chemical weapons, and then it was after that like 5 different forces ended up coming. I mean, what's going on in the country right now is just a giant clusterfuck, and I'd be surprised if anybody on this panel is like adequately qualified to opine on this stuff. It's really fucking. There are consequences to pulling out of a region without any kind of consideration as to what's going to happen. There are serious consequences, and those consequences might be worse than if we had stayed in the region and tried to actually.
What I find very shocking and unfortunate is that this panel is probably more capable of giving a value proposition as to why we should do this or shouldn't than the people in our own government that are actually doing this at the moment.
They told you straight up. They did this in retaliation for an airstrike in Iraq. That killed a U.S. contractor was there and injured like 6 or 7 other people.
Ever seen the journalism scene in the movie Full Metal Jacket? Well, if we're saying it's a lieutenant, why don't we just say it's a general while we're at it? I mean, like, I don't
know what that means, but they gave you their answer. They gave you their explicit reason for doing this. They weren't ambiguous about it.
That's a great story and quote, but like I don't know how it's
actually an even better
to this context.
I mean, as long as American troops or America has a presence in there in general, there will never be like a ceasefire. There will always be retaliation. We'll bomb one of their things, then like 3 months later they'll bomb us, then like 3 months later we'll bomb them. We're the problem. Now, if you want to make the argument that we can pull people out but still support our allies some way by providing them money or arms or services, because I don't want to pull out and like have Iran and Afghanistan like crumble. But at the same time, we can't be there because our presence is escalating everything.
Well, I mean, if we leave a power vacuum though, so that's the problem.
Well, that's what I'm
Yeah.
saying. We can leave while we back up our allies.
At that point, what's the meaningful difference between having a presence there and like
We could help try to
funding an
establish
army?
a coalition defense force. We can pay. I don't know what they do with the money, but
NATO
I
can
don't know
step in.
about foreign policy that much. But there's things we can do that doesn't involve us being in the area.
Essentially, we're there to stop another ISIS from rising up. Correct?
Which was funny
There's
because
like five different
caused
reasons why we're in
ISIS.
Syria. It's not. I mean, ISIS.
yeah.
ISIS
Bombed
is
them out
ISIS
of
is part of it,
existence.
but
Partly we
ISIS is a
caused
part
it
of it.
by
bombed them out
pulling
of
out in the
existence,
first place,
so that's
right?
pretty fun.
what did you say?
Partly we caused ISIS by pulling out a lot of troops in the
Of
first
Iraq.
place.
Right, but that,
Yeah.
but
Dylan's
then you
gonna
go back
say
to the Bush years, and everybody wanted
We
us to
should have
pull out.
never
so they
left
pulled out.
Iraq. There you go.
Well, we didn't really leave. We just rolled down the number
Drew
of
down
troops.
too much.
Yeah. Well,
Well, we can't go back and change the actions of like the Bush administration in 2002 or whatever, or in 2000,
Right.
2002.
It goes back
2003.
further than that.
But we're
Hey,
still
if you wanna
living.
talk
But
about
we're still
Iraq,
living.
That's something I know about. If you guys want to talk about that,
Of course, like conflicts in that region go back not just a couple decades, but several decades. But are we really going to pretend like his decision to invade Iraq wasn't the catalyst that caused all kinds of instability throughout that entire region?
right? I know.
That's
but
got to
you
be the
gotta
number
make
one
that-
catalyzing event.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Okay,
there's
there
pretty
you go.
much two
Gulf
events
War
that
was
pretty
really
much
the
made.
beginning.
But
Wow.
there's basically two events that made the Middle East what it is today. It was the drawing of the maps post World War II, and then just as you were saying that yes, the invasion of Iraq was the other great catalyst that has kind of kicked off all of these varying conflicts that we've had. And so you raised an excellent point, and to me, I was not a fan of the Iraq War. I'm not a fan of pretty much any war, because as the great Dr. Ron Paul once said, if we can just march into a war, we can just march out. And yes, there's going to be pain, and yes, there's going to be unfortunate consequences, but just the same as when you let the dogs of war off the leash. Once in a while, you got to clip the leash back on. I yield back.
so I think there's a difference between just like pulling out at any given time and pulling out in like a stable context. And so one of the questions is whether like when we pulled out, like drew down troops in Iraq.
Been waiting for 2 decades for that. It ain't coming.
Well, so your suggestion, if it's never coming, is that we should just like consign these regions to permanent instability and terrorism?
Yeah, we can't just stay there forever. Like perch.
No, I mean
Yeah,
like
but-
legitimately. No. If you legitimately
one
think
point,
the only
like, I'm
thing
sad
keeping
for
these
them, but
regions
their
stable
problems
is
are
the
not
United
our own.
States, isn't it like a humanitarian mission at that point? Wouldn't you literally argue that?
So you're talking about some militaria sans frontiera, some military soldiers without borders, some sort of great, like that's the point of the military is twofold: to kill people and break things. That is the purpose of any military. So like I don't think
Okay.
that we're gonna have some sort of like grand humanitarian effort. Like I'm sorry that these regions have been fighting each other for a very long time. They're going to continue to do so whether we're there or not. And so the fact that we're getting caught in this foreign entanglement, I think actually leaves us vulnerable, because now we might have to
KOE,
go and defend some abstract thing that
can I ask you a
yes, sir.
question?
Yes, sir.
What about the occupation of Japan?
Yes.
About it.
Never mind, I'm good.
No, I want to know what you want to know about it.
Well, so I think the concept.
No, hang on.
points to-
I'm just curious.
Well, but the thing is, like, we went into Japan with our military, we occupied the country, and we left with the most amount of our troops after the nation was stabilized and had a government, which we helped. There was a lot of problems with what we did there, but we helped establish a quote-unquote democracy. Of course, there's problems with how the communists were treated and stuff like that, but the vast majority of our military left after the nation was stabilized. There was no Japanese civil war after World War II. So what about like
why isn't
instances
that
like
happening?
Yeah.
Why can't we do that again?
I'm going to
that's
shut
like
up now because I'm
sincere
breaking my
question.
rules.
I don't understand.
Well, I mean, so to answer that explicitly, like there are literally studies on why regions and nations and so on are stable, and Iraq is at like the bottom of like numerous of those. It is very poor. It is highly ethnically fragmented, highly religiously fragmented, like linguistically fragmented. On virtually every index you go down, it's a very hard country to start a like highly functional, stable democracy in. So the basic question is like, how do we get it to be on the top of all those indices? And that's like an incredibly difficult question, and somewhat outside the scope of the current conversation, I think. But
While
So
fi-
is Iraq
while
just
fighting-
By the way,
cannot be a
by the
stable
way,
state?
I
no matter-
did
Well, so
that. So
there's-
wait, give me. I want KOE. If you want a period to respond, KOE, you have that period to respond. I just want to make clear.
Yes, thank you. Well, what we're talking about is a post-war occupation of a military that happened to bring about slightly more positive results. The problem is we don't really have an alternate history to compare this to. If we would have just pulled out immediately, there's really no way to know, because Japan is a nation where these are some folks that really are at the cutting edge of a lot of innovations. There's no way of telling that they might have actually been able to recover quite a bit sooner. And if you actually look at what happened post-war Japan, there was a lot of heavy censorship. They weren't allowed to even have any expression of Japanese patriotism or Japanese pride until the late 1950s. This is actually why we got the movie Godzilla, was because they weren't allowed to have actual outward showings of Japanese patriotism. So we're talking about the good, but we also don't talk about the bad, the heavy censorship, the very regimented lives that people were living there. And so, yes, they committed the act of invasion. Yes, they committed the invasion in the war. They committed the initiation of the use of force against us. But at one point, we still have bases in Germany, for God's sakes. It might be time to end World War II.
Well, speaking of world wars, there's a reason that there is so much turmoil in the Middle East, and that has everything to do with at the end of World War I, when borders were initially drawn for those countries, they literally divvied up control of a lot of those countries. It was initially like proposed that it would be British, and dividing it up. They, honest to God, took a ruler and drew lines for where those countries are, completely disregarding where different like ethnic groups were located, and so essentially creating the clusterfuck we have now. That's why it's unique. However, there are also, Japan is one example of a country where there was a U.S. occupation that then resulted in the country doing okay and the U.S. withdrawing as soon as the country had stabilized. Even following World War II, there were a number of examples of that. It's there's a reason that the different like political and there's a reason the Middle East is a different case, because there's a lot more in the way of turmoil because of how arbitrarily those borders were drawn.
So to bring it back to the OG conversation, should Biden have done the airstrike? Or should we be interfering with Iran, even if we or with Iranian-backed militias if they attacked American assets?
I think to bring it back to what Maddy was saying, that I think probably all of us in the call agree that the president shouldn't be granted that sort of unilateral authority to issue those kinds of strikes. But this is the reality that Biden stepped into. He signaled, or the administration did signal, that they were willing to have discussions with Congress about limiting the executive branch's authority to do that sort of thing. Who knows where that conversation is going to land, if it lands anywhere, if it leads anywhere. But sort of like what SocDoneLeft was saying about Biden's immigration policy earlier, this is just going to be something that takes time to bear out the details.
So did he violate like a campaign promise when he did the actions he did, or is he going with what his immigration policy, or not immigration, his international policy was going to be? It seems like this is a very sticky point, and I want the left to identify and declare what the agenda is.
Well, I don't think there was any Democratic candidate that said they weren't going to use drone strikes, including Bernie. I don't think there was maybe like Marianne
Bernie
Williams.
recently did an interview where he said he'd defend Taiwan in a war.
I think some people are calling for drone strikes on Republicans. So
I don't know what that means.
I don't think that was a major Democratic position. No,
it was broadcast on MSNBC though. That was unfortunate.
Biden did say that he was going to pivot to China.
More than that,
and this is, obviously this is something that is not taking place in China. So, but he didn't say that he was going to not engage militarily in conflicts abroad. He didn't make that kind of a promise. So
what if there was a Chinese-backed militia that had attacked one of our people in like Pakistan? I'm not a geography expert or anything, but like would us retaliating in that instance without congressional approval be okay?
Under the current rules, yeah.
We wouldn't
but that's the whole point. That's the whole point that Maddy was bringing up, and that Tim Kaine and who was the other one? Wyden, maybe Ron Wyden, were bringing up that they had serious. These are Democratic senators bringing up the fact that they had serious concerns that the president can have this sort of authority to make these kind of a strike. But if they were to seek congressional approval, how would that even work? Like, would that be telegraphing our intentions in advance? Would they have like a secret meeting of like the Gang of Eight to get authority? Like, I'm not sure.
Well, also, sometimes these things have to be done very quickly, right? If you're going to have military bases and they're going to be attacked, you might have to retaliate like within hours. So you can't expect Congress to be like on call, to make a decision to make like an individual military operation.
That's their job, right?
No,
if you're going to be in that kind of a position, you have to be able to respond to that kind of a quick response, right? Because sometimes quick military action is necessary.
I'm virtually certain that like
it's not Congress's job.
Go ahead.
And it can't be like, you can't expect them to be able to, to come and make like micro decisions like that. You could like, if it's about declaring war, then maybe you can say, okay, you have to do that to declare war. But if you're already in a war situation, then you can't expect Congress to like make these individual decisions in the war. That doesn't.
Correct me if I'm wrong. But the military, the strike from the militia against the air base in Iraq happened before Biden took office, right? So I could be wrong on that one. So if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But if I'm right, he stepped into a situation where, American troops had just and a contractor had just been attacked in Iraq, and he was given the option to respond to that attack. But I mean, we could go back down. It's like turtles all the way down. I mean, you could say that Iran's back in, like, might be justified in backing these militias because we killed Soleimani, and then they might be we were justified in killing Soleimani because of these other airstrikes, and on and on and on and down and down, and like I don't know where that ends.
So is that the Ibril rocket attack, Dylan? I know you're the foreign policy expert. Is that the particular instance? Because that happened on February 17th.
I've been given justification. Okay, it wasn't just one rocket attack. It was multiple rocket attack, because people are like saying it was like one rocket attack, and it wasn't just one rocket attack, right? It was a rocket attack on an airport that's also a civilian airport. It was a second rocket attack that I'm forgetting, and then there was a rocket attack also in the Green Zone, which houses the American embassy, which ended up killing a civilian contractor and injuring American troops. So it was 3 rocket attacks before we responded with the strike that killed 22 members of what is basically a front group, but has things like Kataib Hezbollah within it.
So what was the time frame of that? Was that a matter of weeks, months?
It was like each strike there would be like one strike, one missile attack 1 week, one missile attack next week, and then there was final missile attack, and it was like, okay, then it was the response, basically, if I remember correctly, or it was all bunched in between 2 weeks. It was something like that.
So well within the 40-ish days of Biden's presidency.
If I could fine tune what I said, Biden stepped into this presidency. He was stepping into a reality that predated his campaign.
I mean, Trump did that too, but that doesn't.
There's always a reason to go to war.
The reason why people didn't trust Trump when it came to foreign policy was because he was a petulant fucking child who would vent on Twitter.
War. That's not a petulant child.
Who gives a flying fuck? He dropped more bombs abroad than
people
his predecessors.
Don't want more war do.
He also
if you don't want more war, then you should support someone like Joe Biden or fucking Barack Obama who dropped less bombs.
No, thank you.
You don't understand.
Are you serious?
You don't
when
understand.
Obama took over, we went into several new countries. What are you talking about?
You don't understand. His bombs weren't war bombs. They were peace
they
bombs.
Weren't war bombs.
Well, so this will sound rhetorical, but what is the reason you oppose war?
Why do I oppose
pointless?
War?
Yeah, like what is the bad outcome from
murdering each other?
You should probably keep in mind that Trump had
the
no
only
problem
purpose of
killing
military is to kill
civilians
people, break things.
Okay.
And there's always a point where diplomacy is preferable. Words are always preferable to fists, to knives, to guns. Every time, without fail, full stop.
Sure.
Okay, one question.
Breaking things is the problem. Sorry, go ahead.
Okay. So, KOE, do you really commit to that? Like, full stop?
I would prefer no war worldwide, yes.
Okay, but you do realize like there are instances like, for example, Kuwait or like The
I
invasion of
recognize
France.
that there are times when you have an act of aggression against you. I do believe that the initiation of the use of force is immoral under every circumstance. And so, yes, when you do have an act of invasion or an initiation of the use of force against you, you have every right to defend yourself. Yes, that's the self-defense is defending yourself from another's initiation of the use of force.
So what would you say
those
about
are
like
two moral
if somebody
opposites.
attacked an embassy, for example, which is American territory? What would you call that?
Were people killed?
Yes,
That's what I asked
a civilian contractor. Yes.
Well, then we do have to do something about that, don't we?
But do you need the president to be directing that, or does that have to go through Congress in order to get approval?
Well, this is the unfortunate reality of why we have to have a commander-in-chief. Is at one point George Washington was given the idea of a military council, but he completely threw it off. Like, no, at one point there has to be one voice. I don't like it. I don't like Joe Biden's decisions with his one voice, and that's why I voted against him, and I will vote against him in 2024 because I don't like the decisions he's making.
That's because of time-sensitive issues, right? Like they need to strike somebody right now. They can't get congressional approval right now, so that's why they need the power. Correct?
Yes. Like I can see that there are times when the initiation of the use of force, and well, not even the initiation, but the defense from others' initiations. There's a reason that guns were invented, folks.
What about
There's
Biden's?
some folks that just need it.
What about Biden's decision to freeze arms sales to Saudi Arabia and their conflict with Yemen? I mean, if you're going to talk about Donald Trump as if he's this fucking foreign policy dove, like he supported, I mean, he was continuously selling Saudi Arabia arms throughout the entire conflict.
Because he was trying to support a fellow ally and giving them arms to do their own defensive and stuff, right? I think that's
and what was the result of
Defensive.
what was the result of that though?
Defensive.
Well, I'm just saying that's what the America does. We sell our arms to allies in order to help them defend themselves and do things they need to do, and that's one of Tiffany's back out strategies is to fund and defend our allies as we withdraw troops.
And it resulted in unspeakable atrocities in Yemen, like the loss of life, people displaced, starvation. This was not a good thing. And for Biden to do that does represent a significant shift when it comes to foreign policy. So if the KOE Nation is going to talk about Trump like he's this big, yes, good for him. I'm glad that you gave him credit for that. Thank you.
I mean, like that's the thing. I'm not one of those people that, like, we've seen for
We're
the last
nothing
4
but
years where,
diplomatic.
where the president, everything they do is wrong, and they just occupy every inch of my head. If the president does something that I like, I'll give him, raise my glass to him. If he doesn't, you'll sure hear about it, just like this strike in Syria. Now, Dylan, I've got two things I have to ask real quick. First of all, on a scale of 1 to 10, how much did you want to just throw a cream pie through your camera into my face during at least one of my rants? I'm just curious. Like,
I am not supposed to show bias, and I'm already broken my rules a few times here. I don't know if somebody saw. I was drinking a drink, and I literally had a actual, like, not voluntary spit take, and I got water all over my screen. So I'm trying my best to contain myself.
Someone clip that.
At least I had an influence.
You gotta have it on camera.
The second thing I need to do, and my friends are all telling me that it's in the chat, and I have to do it. Anti-war Chris Farley, it's coming right now. My God, people, don't go to war. We don't need it. We don't want it. No war. How do we get this nation back on track? Not going to war.
Okay. Can I lobby to move to the $15 an hour minimum wage?
You should just skip right to cancel culture, honestly.
But first, KOE, finish that shot because it's helping you a lot.
Okay, so
I've just been sipping on this one all night.
Just the one?
So everybody's good on this.
Dalmore Dominion single malt scotch. It would be a sin to chug it. No.
Damn.
So are we all good on this topic? Does anybody have anything else they want to say? I see SocDoneLeft looks like they're about to die. So
yeah,
the situation is funny.
Okay,
I am well.
Okay, so yeah, we'll go. Does anybody want to do finishing statements, or does everybody just feel good with where we are?
I just want to acknowledge to chat that I am a foreign policy expert, and that Dylan Burns, you shouldn't debate me because I am an expert at this. All right.
Okay. By the way,
I would
Turk,
just like to
Turk, can I ask you a question?
What's up?
What's the capital of Iraq?
I don't know.
Okay. Okay.
Ba-
Anyway,
Baghdad?
so
I'll own up to it. You've already roasted me on my inaugural Dylan Burns panel, dude. I am not a foreign policy expert.
oh, was
it
that the
Kabul?
thing about the Kurds?
actually don't know
Like a
that.
Yeah,
while ago.
that was a long time ago, man.
That was a long time ago. We're a lot more chill than
Precious
that
memories.
now. But where were we?
I was heavily inebriated then. I've learned.
It's Iraq City, by the way. Anyway, we're gonna
Is it Baghdad, Dylan?
Phil,
I'm pretty sure it's
Wanna-
Iraq City, Hutch.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah.
It's Iraq City,
I've heard
Hutch.
that. I've heard that.
Okay. Stick
think
to Call
Dylan's
of Duty.
right. I just looked it up.
Okay. So, obviously, that was not an easy one for me to be a part of, but we're gonna move on to the next one before I explode. Chat. If you ever want me to, if you guys want me to react to this panel afterwards, I would be happy to on Monday. Chat. Okay.
It's your fault for picking foreign policy topics.
Look, it was a big
Yeah.
topic online. I saw a lot of people being extremely brilliant about foreign policy on the internet because everybody's an expert, and I just was like, man, you know what? This is a class of experts. This is the new you're all like future national security advisors. I'm telling you. So we're
I
gonna
would just like to point out that everything I said was correct. And that's all.
Except the wrong
If
parts.
I'm a future national security advisor, then I'm getting that based off my looks and not my fucking knowledge on foreign policy. Let me just say that.
So
Girl, however you get there. Girl,
So
however
we
you
have
get there.
we have time for one more topic, and the last two options are one, the $15 minimum wage, or cancel culture. One $15 minimum wage, of course, has just been kind of shot down in the Senate. That could be a topic of discussion. And the other one is cancel culture that has to do with Dr. Seuss, Eminem, and the stuff around that.
It's way more than that,
So-
but
I
yeah.
was
Well,
kinda
yeah,
looking
but,
forward
but,
to both.
that's why it's back in the news, though, right?
I
It's
was
because
kind
of the
of
Dr.
looking
Seuss
forward to
thing.
both.
I prefer the minimum
Well,
wage.
we only
since I
have
didn't
time for
prep
3
the last
topics.
one.
We have an hour and 30 minutes left, so we could maybe do 2 really short ones, but we'd have to skip intros and
45,
stuff.
45.
Would you guys want to do that instead? 4 topics, first ever? Okay, you know what?
I think-
We'll do that. No intros are banned and outros are banned, though, okay? So you better
Oh shit.
get in there, okay?
Oh, damn.
Got it. So
Rabble, rabble,
this is what we're gonna
rabble,
do. We're gonna start with who wants to start with 15 or who wants to start with cancel culture? Anybody care?
15, I guess.
We'll do 15.
I
Okay.
prepped most
Yeah.
for 15.
Okay, we'll start with 15 then. $15 minimum wage. Open panel. Go.
All right. Well, it seems like a moot point now, but the bill's been killed. But the last time that there was an increase in the minimum wage was 13 years ago, from $5.85 to $7.25, which is the current minimum wage. This is despite the fact that the economy's capacity to deliver high wages has doubled in the past 50 years, as measured by labor productivity or the amount of output produced by workers. Had minimum wage kept pace, it would be $22.19 today, due to the minimum wage remaining stagnant alongside a rising economy and prices increasing regardless. We're unable to jump from $7.25 to $22.19. As it stands now, $7.25 an hour isn't enough income to live off of, especially for people who work part-time or are single parents. That's where the $15 minimum wage comes in. $15 is not an arbitrary amount. It's 60% of the median wage, which comes out to be around $14.89 rounded up. That's $15 an hour. It's the highest we can raise the minimum wage currently without permanently or severely hurting the economy. And I have more to say, but I'm talking a lot.
Where do you get that number? Like, why do you say that's the highest it could be without permanently damaging?
So
the
the
economy?
60%.
I mean,
figure-
there's a graph. I'd have to look it up though, or I can send it to you via.
You know where the
I like
You
graphs.
can post it in the
Sure.
Discord.
No,
or in
the
the web
60% figure comes from, I believe, a literature review by Aaron Dajat Dube in 2019 or 2020, where they looked at minimum wage raises up to 60% of the median wage, which would be roughly, I want to say, like 14 and change in 2025, whenever it would hit the final thing. And so they said in their review that there would be negligible disemployment effects up to about that point in the research they've seen. But we can't know more beyond that.
That's correct.
If I may, I brought this up a little bit last time, but nobody really quite addressed it when we did talk about minimum wage. And it was something I brought up that in 1968, the minimum wage was raised to $1.60 an hour. But at the time, we were under a gold and silver standard in which the dollar was legally defined as 1 troy ounce of silver. Now, if you were to take the current melting price of 1.6 ounces of silver, you get to roughly $41. So that was the actual purchasing power in 1968 on someone on minimum wage was taking home $41 of equivalent purchasing power. The difference is what has been stolen from you by inflation. And that's the unfortunate regime we find ourselves in, is you can raise the minimum wage as high as you like. Any gains you try are going to be inflated right out from under you until you actually get back to something closely, at least somewhat resembling a sound money system. And so that is why I advocate. You want to help the little guy? Advocate for sound money. You want to fuck over the big times? Advocate for sound money. That's why I advocate for it, folks. It's not a love affair with gold and silver. They just happen to work. They're fungible, they are liquid, and they're non-perishable. So it just happens to work. It's something that helped our nation go through some of the highest standards of living in our nation's history, some of the biggest economic booms in our history under this particular money system. So just something to think about, folks, is I'm actually advocating for the highest minimum wage of probably anybody on the panel, but I'm doing it through proper purchasing power. And I yield back to the rest of you beautiful people.
SocDoneLeft.
Silver is not a good, like usually we want to compare the basket of consumption goods. Silver is not a useful consumption good. So moving back to the real world, the basic idea on the minimum
wage— it's non-perishable, that's why it works.
Sure, so are chairs. So the basic idea is that
they break.
Minimum wages, as we look at them,
metal doesn't break in the same way. They don't rot.
Sure, steel is non-perishable. Let's just move back to steel. Okay, so the basic idea on the minimum wage is that when we see minimum wages raised up to say like 60%, there doesn't seem to be really big disemployment. That comes from a bunch of meta studies. I don't want to get too much into that. That's boring.
You're going to get there though.
Yeah, we're going to get there.
Because I'm going to bring it to you.
So,
I hope so.
The studies there, I think, are like Dube's collaborators, and a few earlier ones like Dokugliagos, and a really early one by Card and Kruger, who's famous. I think Card recently committed suicide, so he's in the news. Let's see. And then the other side of it is like the benefits. So I think the estimate that Dube came is that if we doubled the minimum wage to $15 or just about, it would cut poverty by like 30%, something along those lines. Like it has an incredible downshifting where like the incomes of the bottom rise.
It would pull 900,000 people out of poverty, roughly.
How do they come to that conclusion?
What
there's a
percentage of
CBO
those 900,000 just
CBO.
lose their jobs?
There's a
Like,
study.
you're talking about
It's called
change.
statistics.
Yeah,
Have
would
they
you like
studied
to
minimum
see the
wage
study?
changes
Because I actually
anything
have
like
this
what's being
source on
proposed here?
hand.
Well, I brought
We're
up
looking at-
statistics, and they were just waved aside, which, I'm sorry, socialism done left. I haven't really insulted your positions at all this evening, so I'd really appreciate it if you would actually extend the same.
Here, I'll post it in here. Since
These
Can we
you're
get
are the real numbers, folks. $25 an ounce is what silver is going for. So that's what you would have actually been bringing home at $1.60 an hour minimum wage in purchasing power. The difference is what's been stolen from you.
Can we just get off the silver and gold standard though? We're not shifting to that. It's not going to happen. Can we just like focus the conversation on
Yeah,
the
let's get
reality
on
that we live in
platinums
right
and
now?
diamonds.
Yeah,
and
like,
tell us about
relax,
the
Any
relax, Ron
gains you make
Paul.
will be
Relax,
inflated right
Ron
up from under
Paul.
you, man. I mean,
Okay,
I'm sorry.
you made your
Make
point
the
though.
minimum wage $1 million an hour, and it'll still be inflated out from under you. Any gains?
And to
Sorry.
defend
That's
KOE's
not-
point
that's
on
not
the inflation,
true.
Yeah, it
it
actually
is. It is 100%
No.
true.
No,
If
that's
you
not
go to
100% true.
Wikipedia-
I have an advanced degree in economics, and that's not true
All right, so
at
go-
all.
If you
Look,
go to Wikipedia,
listen, KOE Nation, just like their money, these left-wing brains are inflated, full of hot air, okay? So you guys gotta accept it.
Right, you're absolutely right. I forgot about that, sir.
So if you go to Wikipedia and you look up minimum wage in the United States, they have a chart on there that represents the minimum wage and its actual buying power across time. And as KOE said, back in the 60s, there was a lot more buying power for the minimum wage. And what happened is as time progresses, we continue to raise the minimum wage. And sure, in the immediate aftermath of that increase, wages goes up. The buying power of that dollar goes up. But unfortunately, inflation hits and that value goes down. And it happens every single time we raise the minimum wage.
No, because there's times we
you
don't
increase
raise
the currency, you increase.
we don't raise the minimum wage for like
Every
11,
time-
13 years, but prices still rise regardless.
Every time we've
Yes,
set a
it's
minimum
inflation.
wage in the past, Turk, we've set it at nominal levels, so it's not inflation adjusted. One of the big differences in the current minimum wage is that it is inflation adjusted. The reason that the value of the minimum wage goes down over time is because there's natural inflation over time. It's only set at
Yes.
$2, but it's not set at $2 real dollars. It's set at $2 nominal dollars.
That's why I'm advocating for gold and silver standard, because
Okay,
the
for
cost of
Christ's
goods
sakes,
tracking any
please.
potential inflation. It's just that simple, and people don't get fucked out of their purchasing power.
We can't
look at the
support
chart on
your
Wikipedia, and
silver
it says
business.
that the purchasing power of the minimum wage today
I don't really
is
care
about
about
the same as it
gold or
was
silver. They
in
just happen to
1950.
work.
Correct.
No. That cannot possibly. Can I
It
get a
is.
link
If
for
you
that?
go to
I'm just
that freaking Wikipedia, it
the
shows you
purchasing
what the
power-
dollar
wait, no,
power is for the minimum wage.
A person earning minimum wage in this country used to be able to support a family of 4. College was significantly less
$41 of
expensive.
purchasing
Healthcare
power.
was significantly less expensive. Real estate was significantly less expensive back then. You could stretch out that money a lot further back then than you could now. I don't know what you're looking at.
Well,
As
because
your
the
silver
specific
dollars
things
would
were
be pretty close.
Again,
actually.
I don't
were
think they're
cheaper.
talking about. They aren't talking about like living costs. They're just talking about like not. They aren't talking about this compared to a basket per se. They're talking about this in like nominal terms versus real terms.
Yeah, like
I mean,
housing
as
is more
things now,
expensive than it was because there's a shortage of it,
Americans
right?
can't even pay, can't afford like emergency medical bills or childcare or even car repairs. That we need an increase in the minimum wage, whether it's the 15 or whatever. It's not viable right now.
And if anything, what an increase in the minimum wage would end up stimulating the economy, because what you're doing, so especially when you put money in at the lowest level, that money is more likely to be injected back into the marketplace than at any other level if you were to put it in. So for a lot of these people, all that money that they'd be getting, and I say all that money as if it's a big fucking amount, but it really isn't, but it'd be enough for them to survive. A larger chunk of that cash will then be injected back into the marketplace, which drives consumption, which drives demand. Like, it's an economically sound policy, and the only reason we haven't done it,
they would have more capital to spend, which means they could put it back into the economy, which would only help the economy. It would circulate more, especially if given
those
to
people can get the money, where else would
workers
it
and
end up?
small business owners.
So before we get too far from the inflation point,
money's in the
answer-
economy no matter what,
I just want just on the inflation point, we actually have empirical evidence on this, right? And so like the study that I would cite is Lemos 2008. It's a survey of minimum wage effects on prices. So the highest effect of a 10% increase of minimum wages on prices is around 2%. So even if we grant that, that means that about 8 of 10 of like the raises of the minimum wage get passed on to the worker. So even in like the most extreme cases of very substantial inflation, it doesn't seem that this is a significant issue. This just isn't true.
We talk about these things as if they're unambiguous, but we have examples to point to where states or cities have raised their minimum wage to $15 an hour. We have not seen rental prices skyrocket. We have not seen burgers costing $20 an hour or whatever the fucking latest propaganda is on that. It's just simply not happening. If
What
you
was
I
the
have
do
a
it,
percentage
link of
raise in those
33
cases?
places
if
in the
you do
United
it-
States with a $15 minimum wage. I'll drop it in chat.
if you do it responsibly, like it would be irresponsible to just double the minimum wage right now. That would have serious consequences on the economy. If you do it incrementally over the course of 5 years, we already have enough evidence right now through various states and localities.
What do you think is going to happen in
five?
5 years that would make it work, whereas it wouldn't work overnight?
You would ideally
She
we
would
would
allow
ad-
businesses
ideally
to
we
adjust.
ideally we
Yeah.
would be adjusting the minimum wage.
How
we
are
would
they
be
going to
adjust-
adjust though?
We would adjust the
What do you
minimum.
mean how are they
There's
gonna
various
adjust?
ways that you can do it. You can do it
what are they
according.
gonna
You
do?
can do it in correlation with the median wage. You can do it in correlation with inflation. But there are ways that you can continually raise the minimum wage in a way that isn't going to completely wreck the economy. And this was why the minimum wage was conceived of in the first place. The entire purpose of the minimum wage was to increase the buying power of low-income earners in this country, so that at the very least they would be able to support themselves. I think we can all agree on this panel that that is simply not what's happening right now. Somebody making minimum wage in tons of cities across this country, in fact, probably most cities, are not going to be able to like support themselves and lead a dignified life. They're going to have to pick up another job or something that works 60 hours a week. Maybe they have kids. Now that's time they're not spending with their kids, helping them with schools or extracurricular activities, whatever. It's been a drain on this country for like the last 50 years to see wages stagnate while inflation just continues to rise.
So we're talking about $15 an hour for the whole country, right? That's what we're considering here.
Ideally,
You're saying
yeah,
that
that would be the goal.
is there any research that looks at a minimum wage increase that drastic and that across that
If you
many
want that
different-
research, you're going to have to first implement it last username. We're not going to sit there but get it by sitting on our
How many
asses.
people are
I
actually
can't
putting
just
our
go
hands on our
and,
asses and sitting
learn
on
about
So,
it, see what
so what we
happens. It's not a
know
good
from the
argument.
CBO, they projected
So-
that it would lift 900,000 people out of poverty, but it would also eliminate close to 900,000
Right.
jobs.
CBO
I
estimate
think
is really bad.
150 or
Yeah,
1.5
but-
million.
This is just an estimate. I don't know what to make from that.
I was about to say, like, Hutch is absolutely correct. Hutch
but
is
they're also-
absolutely correct when he says there is a diminishing return. Because, I mean, folks, has anybody in this audience or in this panel been into like a Walmart or anything lately? Cashiers, checkers, remember them? They're going bye-bye with automation. So there is a diminishing returns with this stuff. And so we're talking about these tiered systems. I'm at least willing to listen to that because that might slow down what I was just describing there. But folks, that is a real thing. Automation in America, one of the most dangerous things you can actually do is hire somebody, because that actually exposes you to all levels of tort, all kinds of liabilities. And so, yeah, if you keep making the cost higher, there is going to be a diminishing returns there, and you are going to get greater investment in automation. I've seen it personally myself. And
There will be inevitable job loss by raising the minimum wage to $15, anywhere from 1.4 to 2 million. However, you're neglecting to consider that if the minimum wage increases, it'll also create more jobs. If people are making more money and they have more money to spend at businesses, they'll be able to.
But
Therefore,
it's a net negative.
Well, so here's the thing too.
big
These are
business
the people that you were
depends on
just
the
talking about.
Wait, real quick. During COVID-19, 20.6 million jobs were lost, and right wingers just brushed that to the side. That's 20 times more than what we're talking about. So don't give me like shit that you care about American jobs.
So here's the thing too. The
And
people
you know,
that
I care about small business too.
the people you were just referencing, those cashiers at Walmart, these are the people over the past year that were deemed essential. They were essential workers, right? So they were having to go into work and risk being infected. And yet, so these people are, imagine
Essential
deeming
worker,
someone
right.
imagine, I'm not done. Imagine deeming someone an essential worker, but then denying them a livable wage and expecting the government on the back end to subsidize their health care, their rent, other things, because the business is too cheap. A business, by the way, that drives billions in profit. Imagine that, like, deeming them an essential worker and denying them a livable wage. That to me is
Which business are we
mind-boggling.
talking about?
By the way, if
supermarkets?
we increase the minimum wage to $15 an hour, households with 2 or less people no longer qualify for Medicaid. So they would no longer be able to
Because
get that
they'd be
kind
able
of
to
claim.
purchase it from the private market. Shouldn't
Yeah.
we want that
And
as a
their
right winger?
dollar, and their dollar spending power is
Don't
not
you guys
gonna
love
be
markets?
good.
Yeah,
Okay,
right.
okay,
They're
okay,
gonna
okay,
probably
okay,
have less
okay,
money
okay,
to
okay.
spend.
Can I say
Stop,
something
stop.
real
Yeah,
quick?
okay. So, sure. I had to use the bathroom. I'm
Real
sorry. My lack of presence. See, this is why we need a state, because my lack of presence, there was no authority for enforced here. Okay, so last username. Once again, stateship shown to be the top tier ideology. I'm gonna throw it over to Drone.
No, I just want to ask Sock, because he said wouldn't a right winger want that, but as a left winger, are you okay with basically helping out big business
so poor
wipe
that
out
they have to be on
competition?
government healthcare? No.
What?
I want government healthcare for everyone, not everyone to be so poor they're on government healthcare.
Well,
Those are not
no,
the
but
same
I'm
thing.
saying, like, okay, well,
So you want
I'm
them to
saying, like,
have
you're
a
helping
higher
big
minimum
business.
wage and universal health care.
Yeah, like most of the like not most of the world. Like a
So you would
significant
be
portion.
okay with
There are
them
plenty of small
earning
businesses that-
$27,000 a year, paying 50% in taxes in order to fund all that stuff?
Wait,
If a job is
50%.
worth being done, it's worth being paid a living wage. You shouldn't ask your workers to subsidize. If you're a business person, by not paying them a minimum wage
No more
or
small
not paying them a
business.
livable wage, you are asking them to subsidize your business on the back end, and that's unacceptable.
So
Why
you're
is
cool
it
with
a
big
why is
business.
it worth
You're big
paying a
with-
minimum
You're
wage?
cool with big
a living
corporations
wage if it's
wiping
worth
out their
being done? I don't
competition.
understand that.
So
Why would
that's
you say
Plenty
that?
of small
Okay.
businesses that are able to pay their people a living wage.
No.
Yeah.
What if they're
Yes,
not?
yes,
average-
absolutely.
What if
Yeah.
the job is
Yes.
worth being done, but it's not?
If-
But it's
right,
just not
if the
worth
job is worth
$15
that,
an hour.
about to say, not all labor is created equal. Not all labor.
If
has
you
equal
work
value.
40 hours a
Whoa,
week,
whoa.
you should be able to afford to live. If you work a full-time job, there
What's
is
the
no
work? That's
excuse
subjective.
for why
What do you
you
mean
shouldn't be
should?
able to afford
What's the
Like you're
work?
saying that
afford
that a
subjective.
$14.99
Work.
job
Okay,
is not
What's
worth
the work?
it.
That's subjective.
You are saying that
Okay.
certain people deserve to be impoverished. Are
I'm
you
saying
No,
anything
I'm
about what
not.
people deserve.
That's
People
exactly
make
what
their
you're
own
saying.
choices.
Wait,
Individuals make their own choices.
$40 hours a week, you can have
okay,
5 cents, not what he wants. Your labor has no value.
But we know,
No,
Maddy.
that. Okay. So, when I speak, no one else speaks. Okay, so this is an unruly conversation. So, I'm just gonna start muting people if they don't quiet down when I speak up. Okay, everybody? Because that's a very
falling asleep. That was the first interesting thing to happen.
I know.
Okay, good.
Okay, yeah, it's interesting, yeah. But the thing is, if everybody's going at the same time, chat's just like they don't get anything out of it, you know. I like chaos, but we need to control it, right? Like a military coup, kind of, you know. Anyway,
Thinking Sonic the
So-
Hedgehog, chaos
so-
control.
Dronetek, you were going to respond. That was something directed at you, so you explain your position more clearly.
I lost what, Maddy? What did you say? I'm sorry, I've lost track of what we were talking about at this point. I'm sorry.
I don't know. I got
Exactly.
distracted.
You said
People,
no.
people working
you-
40 hours
My-
a week
right,
deserve to
right.
My
live.
dog came in. I
Right,
have to
she said
close
that
the
you deserve to
phones.
live, but here's the thing: is that different jobs, different levels of skill, and all of these things are more valuable than others. And so when you just say arbitrarily the government's going to slap a tag on what is essentially a low-wage job that a small business may not be able to shell out a lot of money for, maybe they do need some higher skilled people, but some lower skilled people, you're going to just wipe them out, and you're only helping these big corporations that can take those bigger wages, but these
That's
smaller
not
people
true.
can't.
That's just not true, though.
So I
The
will
data
agree.
doesn't support that argument.
What part isn't true?
Yeah.
That
Data
work
doesn't
is
support
it's
that
subjective.
argument.
You think that all work
the
is
government
worth the same?
has always had the ability to raise the minimum wage for decades. Anyone who opens a business has to recognize that the
If you have
fact
the
that
ability,
there's a possibility for the minimum wage to be changed, and they'll have to adjust their payout to accommodate those wages. So what you're
But-
saying is complete bullshit. They know.
No,
It
what
doesn't
Yeah,
have the
yeah.
ability.
What is
It has the
additionally-
intrinsic value of a
additionally-
it's not complete bullshit. Actually,
Additionally, even in rural areas where there aren't that many companies, they would still need to pay their workers more. That means more money would go pouring back into their stores since there aren't many places to shop in that area, and people have more capital to spend.
okay.
The more money
Blah, blah, blah,
circulating
blah.
the economy, the better. I mean, it's
But-
easy.
No,
Okay, for
no.
the people saying that minimum wage will give
Yes.
people more money, like it doesn't create money, right? The money that would be
it
paid to them is going to be somewhere else if it's not paid to them. It's going to be in the economy. It's going to be in someone else's hands, and it's going to and then they're going to spend it on
Circulate,
something.
yeah.
So why do you
Well, you know
think
why?
that it's
Sure.
that transferring the money over, if that is indeed what happens, is somehow going to be better for the economy?
Maddie
Sure.
seems
There's
to
going to
have
be
something she
three
wants to
main
say.
things here that
No,
happen.
Hutch had his hand up.
No, go ahead.
Sorry.
That's fine. That's fine.
Well, sure. So
Yeah,
there's three main
so-
things that happen. One, there's a shift of income from the people who own businesses to the people who work at them. So it's a shift of capital to labor income. This leads to a higher propensity of spending, which grows the economy just naturally, sort of Keynesian multiplier effects. The second is that there's an efficiency effect.
Why?
I was actually going to disagree.
Oh, that's very intelligent.
Why is
Sure,
shifting
why is
income
there-
from
It's Keynesian
business owners to
economics.
workers
Ew,
gonna stimulate the
Keynes,
economy?
yuck.
Sure, because generally
Yum.
capital income goes to people who are less willing to spend the
Rothbard,
money.
yum, Keynes,
Okay. One
I
person
haven't
at a
heard
time,
any of you
please.
guys address
Yeah.
the fact that
Look,
there is different levels
wait,
of skill
that-
and they're worth
Who's
more
not
money.
willing
Dro-
to spend money?
I'd like to.
No,
As a portion
okay,
of
stop.
okay.
Socialism done left. I have a bad announcement for you.
Uh-oh. Am I
You-
muted?
Yes, you're muted for a good
Oh,
3 minutes.
tragic.
Okay, it's tragic. Okay, we gotta continue now. I'll put a timer on for 3 minutes. Okay, Turk has had his hand up for a while, so I'm gonna throw it over to Turk.
So the thing that y'all are missing from what Dronetek is saying is that labor has a value to it, and then unfortunately, each type of labor has a dollar amount that the market can bear. You can't just say a $725 labor skill it is instantly going to be worth $10 or $11 or $14, even if you transfer it over time. That's not, the market can't handle that. Now, I will also say that there are a lot of studies out there that say that when you raise minimum wage in certain markets, it does have a negligible impact. There's mixed studies from Seattle that prove that point. There's also stuff from New York and other, major metropolitan areas where, as they staggered the increase in the cost of labor, it didn't vastly impact the job. However, when you start to mandate nationally that every job is going to be worth at least $15 an hour, there's many places in the country that can't afford that for a basic minimum wage. And unfortunately, there's also another minimum wage. It's called zero. A lot of companies are just not going to hire people because they can't pay the $15 minimum wage. Unfortunately, if you go and look at Bureau of Labor and Statistics, if you go to the $30,000 a year limit that what's supposedly going from $7.25 to $15 an hour, it doesn't support this. Their mean average income is going to be $22,818.9, and their average expenses are going to be $34. So it's like they're already still in debt. You got to increase, if you want to get people out of poverty and living comfortably, you got to go to 22, 25, 30. You have to go that high. Bringing the minimum wage to 15 solves nothing here.
Okay, can I?
Yeah, it'll be Hutch, but then KOE has raised his hand as well, and then we're gonna unmute Socialism Done Left. Okay, great.
I don't think anybody on this panel is going to argue the fact. Well, maybe some. I don't know how leftist you guys are, but I don't think anybody on this panel is going to argue the fact that some labor is going to provide more of a value to the company that's paying the laborer. I don't think anyone is saying that again, I might be wrong about that every job should pay exactly the same. The philosophical debate that we're having right now is, should there permanently exist an underclass of people who are forced to work for substandard wages that they cannot survive on? And
but
it seems
nobody's
to me,
forced to work.
What do you mean nobody's forced to work?
To counter what you just said, Hutch,
technically, yes, you could just live on the street, or find somebody to crash on the couch permanently or something like that. But you just said a moment ago, Dronetek, that you're not
homestead out in Arizona.
You just said a moment ago, Dronetek, that you're not saying that there needs to be people that are forced to live in poverty, but you kind of are. If you're saying that a company should be allowed to pay people substandard wages that they can't live on, you are inherently saying that there needs to exist the alternative. An alternative could
be
an
underclass of people who don't get any wages. Why is this?
Yeah.
What are you talking about? There were jobs wouldn't just disappear tomorrow if
yeah, they would. I think they would.
You're saying every job in America would if we're going by CBO estimates, we would lose anywhere between 1 million and 2 million jobs. However, the very base level that people would be hired at would be enough to live on. That's a trade-off that I'm comfortable with.
And
so
the
it seems to
people
me,
that lost their job,
you raise the minimum wage to
zero.
$15 now, you are creating a permanent class of people.
We gotta give a second. KOE has been waiting for a while to jump in. So KOE.
Now,
Great point,
just a slight shift, but Dylan, you said you had a quote from Vosh you wanted to read?
It's true. I never got to read it. Let me read this quote
I'm too
quick.
curious.
Okay, I was gonna read it.
That's really it. I'll yield back to
I'm
anybody
curious what
else.
Turk has to say, honestly.
Okay, we'll get over to Turk next. Let me write down everybody else down. But I have it. Okay, so Vosh has a message about his recent victory with the Hippy Dippy Championship, since he's the current champion, and he will be defending it soon. After we're going to be announcing something next week on who will be the next challenger for the belt and how we will decide that. In the immortal words of Carl Lenin, I will bury you with you being capitalism, and by bury I mean win a debate or whatever. Maybe I can bury it with the weight of my big shiny new belt, which I eagerly looked forward to the arrival of. And I just want to make clear that we're still trying to decide who will be the next challenger, and we're trying to make a format to decide that. But as everybody knows, Vosh won the title last Friday on the Hippy Dippy Championship match against Bastiat in a split decision, and he's a current ruling champion, the face of Debate Center on Twitch and YouTube. And we will be shortly deciding how we're going to pick the next champion. Just an update on the Hippy Dippy Championship belt for everybody at home waiting for that news. Okay, now, Turk, you've been waiting.
Yeah, so this goes back to what Hutch and Maddy are saying. It's okay, let's say we bump up the minimum wage to 15 across the board nationally.
Over 5 years.
Say again?
Over the course of 5 years.
Even if it's tomorrow, it doesn't matter. If you raise minimum wage to $15
It really
an hour,
does, though, Turk.
let me finish, please. If you increase the minimum wage to $15 an hour, average income goes up to between $15,000 and $30,000. Net income is $22,000 before taxes, and then mean annual expenditures is $34,000. So even if you got everyone minimum wage at 15, they are still overspending what they're making in on average. If you're wanting to get people to be comfortable living wages, it's got to be 20 or 22 or 25. 15 is not going to bring the salvation to this problem, guys.
Okay, Maddy?
15 would...
Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
I'll write you down, Hutch.
You know what? The Turk, I agree. When we first brought the $15 minimum wage to the forefront of mainstream discourse, that was, 10 years ago? But I agree. Accounting for the rate of inflation, the minimum wage really should be closer to $22. Unfortunately, because of the stalemate that has happened in Congress over the past decade, because the GOP has essentially adopted a strategy of blocking and doing nothing except for giving big tax breaks to their billionaire friends, that's why we haven't seen any movement on implementing anything to make sure that the minimum wage is tied somewhat to the actual cost of living. So I guess for me, it's just hard for me. Like, I have an economics degree. I've been published in economics. And even aside from that, it's hard for me to say that for someone who's working 40 hours a week, especially when their job was deemed essential during the pandemic, I find it extremely difficult to then, in the same breath, say that they don't deserve a livable wage, that job should only allot them a wage that puts them into poverty.
As
That's
someone that
all.
has an economics degree, I would expect that you would understand how a market can sustain certain quantities of labor and the cost associated with that labor.
I'm well aware.
Oh, then why?
There's no economist that says right now. There's no
thing
like
called the
mainstream
supply and
economist that
demand
says
curve,
that says
though.
that a
That's gotta be
$15 an
ignored in
hour
this
minimum
discussion.
wage. Wait, hold on. There's no mainstream economist that says that the $15 an hour minimum wage is going to wreck the economy.
Correct.
I don't know, like
You yourself, Hutch,
I will
quoted
find you
the
many
CBL
economists
study
that
that
say
said there would be a net
Well, we mean
increase.
There are
increase of
Nobel
900.
Prize winning economists that argue that that the $15 minimum wage not only isn't enough, but like if it were implemented even today, even without that 5-year grace period where they ramp up to it, it wouldn't destroy our economy. In fact, over the long term, it would strengthen our economy because it would mean injection of capital back into the market, driving consumption, driving demand. Like it's the economics on it are sound.
No,
And again, there are Nobel Prize winning
You could have stopped that
economists.
Nobel Prize.
Here's the funny
You
thing
can just
about
stop there.
economists,
Wait,
if
one
I may,
moment.
here's
Okay,
the
you
funny
go,
thing
then
about
let's-
economists. They
No,
all
no.
claim to be able to tell nations how they need to manage their wealth. There's no such thing as a wealthy economist. You just don't really find an extremely wealthy economist. So we're supposed to believe these people who can't manage a great wealth themselves nor create one, yet they know how to manage the nation.
Do you know how wealth is acquired?
I have a really
Do you
simple
know how
question.
wealth is acquired
Yeah.
in America?
Let's use
well,
an
this is what I wanted to
bring up.
Okay,
Okay,
let's use
$15
names and
minimum
SDL.
wage.
Let's
Here's
use
a
names.
simple question for the minimum wage supporters. I think it's a simple question anyway. Even if you think that any able-bodied adult could earn $15 an hour, surely there are going to be at least some people who simply can't be productive enough to make that much money. And I'm thinking like very young people who may have dropped out of high school, or they're immigrants and they don't speak the language very well and they don't have a good education, so they're at a severe disadvantage in the labor market, or people with mental or physical disabilities who are fundamentally going to have very difficult time competing in the labor market. Surely there are going to be cases where they just cannot produce $15 worth of value, and that seems to make it seems that the minimum wage makes it impossible for those people to work, to get a job.
the jobs that exist now are going to be this.
Would you at
the
least give them an exemption?
But wait,
No,
the jobs that
Sure.
exist.
So
That's not the bulk
way
of
that
the
you
people
deal
that
with
are
those
receiving
people
minimum
is the
No, I
way
know
that
it's not the
you
bulk
deal
of the
with
people,
other
but there's going to be some
non-workers.
people. I'm just asking, in the case of those people, would you at least be okay with giving them an exemption?
No.
Well, here's
because
the
you
thing,
don't
that's
solve
also-
poverty
Why
by
not?
making everyone work. You solve
Yeah,
poverty
but
with
it's also-
welfare.
I also
50% of
disagree.
the economy
So the
doesn't work at
premise-
any given time.
But that's still giving them exemption.
Right.
You're saying you're allowing them to work, would you allow them to work for less than minimum wage? If you want to give them the subsidy, sure, fine, we can talk about that. But would you let them say take a job for less than minimum wage if that's the only thing they can do?
The whole point of
Assuming
this
that we
discussion
can
is,
measure. Oh yeah, Hutch, go for it.
I'm just saying the whole point of this discussion is the absolute floor for how we value labor. Like that's the whole point. These jobs aren't going to like disappear. It's going to be this
labor.
Of
Okay.
course, and
We value
as
labor
we-
based on what it produces.
that's
Labor
that's
is
the
labor,
point. Though.
valued on
labor
its own
doesn't produce
supply
something that's worth
demand
$15 an hour,
correct.
then the labor isn't worth $15 an hour.
Kids getting out of high school, getting a job in a McDonald's or something, it doesn't take brain power. They can still do the job perfectly fine and get the money. Additionally, there are plenty of places where people don't, like immigrants don't speak well English. Like, for example, a lot of landscaping companies, they do fine. They have jobs here in America, so that's pointless. And
Are you
lastly,
saying it's
and
impossible?
lastly, the people you said were disabled, a lot of those people don't even work. They just get they get money from the government. So
is that okay? What if they could work for,
if
for
they're
less than
disabled
minimum
and they
wage,
can't work,
and you give them
then
less of a
yes.
subsidy? And what if they want to do that? What if they I don't want to just sit and live off the government. I'd like
even
to
if
try
they're
to
disabled,
support
they should
myself.
get $15 an hour.
Jesus Christ. I shouldn't even
Well,
tell
wait,
this
give
to
me-
the left
give me-
because
give
I
me
don't
one
want...
Give me one moment. STL has been waiting and he was muted, and so I think it would make sense for him to be able to speak. KOE, I'll write your name though. There's like a long line right now of people, including Turk, Hutch, a million people right now. So STL, you're next, and it's going to be Hutch, then Turk, and then KOE. I'm sorry, just gotta go with the line.
Sure. So the three things to mention here are one, the monopsony model. So I think that one thing that people keep referring to is that there's this idea of a simple supply and demand, like crossing curves like this. And if you increase the wage, you're like putting an arbitrary floor. So therefore you're limiting people's employment. The problem is that the real world is not a supply and demand model because of something called monopsony. Workers don't have equal power with their employers. There are people who own capital. Not everyone has capital, and therefore they have access to who works. That is like, if you want John Romer, Marxian socialist analysis, you can go read that if you want.
Where is low-skilled
monopsony.
labor a monopsony? Where's the monopsony in low-skilled labor?
Sure. The idea of monopsony is that workers don't have sufficient power
know
to
what it
bargain
means.
up their wages.
But where, like, show me any, like, how many
Oh,
places
sure. I mean,
is
if
there
you
like
want
only
empirical
one person
evidence of
hiring
monopsony.
low-skilled labor? Usually low-skilled labor is really...
Sure. If you just want to do the semantics thing, I can call it oligopsony or whatever. Okay, I don't care.
It's not
Call it
semantics. I'm
monopsony.
saying, like, show me examples of where, like, how much monopsonies on low-skilled labor are there?
Let him finish
in
his
America?
point.
Sure. So it's not about monopsony. It's about there being, in general, a high concentration of labor. I can send you a study. I think it's Azar 2017, which showed that I think each decile increase of labor market concentration led to like a 5% decrease in posted wage or something along those lines. Like more concentrated labor markets where there are fewer and
But we're
fewer
only talking about the minimum wage, like the very low-skilled labor, right? So in those, among people who are going to be affected by minimum wage, where's their monopsony? Where's there only one company hiring people at minimum wage?
Well,
Sure,
let him
so
finish
there-
the full point.
There's both monopsony in that they're limited employers, and there's also monopsony from the very fact that workers don't have equal power. I don't know how to make that more clear. It's that there
That's not
there
monopsony, though.
So if we want to call it something else, if we want to call it market power, I'd be happy to do so. Okay. Now, maybe market power and monopsony, you could equate the two, but I don't really care about the terminology. The idea is that this is something we can empirically measure, we can observe it, and we can see that like when you raise things up to the point where like you're talking about monopsony, there's not big disemployment. Even within works even within neoclassical models.
No, I mean, you can theoretically, you can say if there was one employer, then you'd have and if there was a monopsony situation, then you can use the model to show that it's possible a minimum wage could actually make the market more efficient. But I'm saying, where is that actually the case? Where is there a monopsony on low skilled employment, on minimum wage employment? It just doesn't seem. It seems like low skilled labor is the least likely thing to have a monopsony on, right? Because there's no skill. So a low skilled person can get a job at pumping gas or flipping burgers or a whole bazillion other industries, right?
Flipping burgers and working at a McDonald's isn't low skill. It's actually very strenuous and hard to do.
Okay, fine. Like,
I worked at
less
Google
skill,
and it was
doing
easier
now-
than
less skill, the more
burgers.
competition there is in the
What
labor
you're doing
market,
right now is less
Because people
strenuous
can-
than what a McDonald's worker does.
True.
The
Well,
less
yeah.
skill,
But it's not about
Unless-
skill. It's about
What?
the quantity of people that are able to do the task and what the
Okay.
value of that task is worth.
Exactly.
Okay.
right?
But
there's more
my
people who
issue is
can-
how
Robot
you
can do it.
calculate
Okay.
the value
easier for them to move around and
extracted
compete with each
because
other.
it's
right?
Okay.
inherently flawed.
Okay, let's move on. Hutch has been waiting for a very long time. After that's going to be Turk, then KOE.
Well,
Okay.
I appreciate that. So I guess there's two things that I wanted to point out. Well, number one, I did hope that this would venture into the discussion about what is responsible for the $15 an hour minimum wage failing. That's a totally separate topic. I don't even know if we're going to get there, but to anybody that's saying that Joe Biden killed the $15 an hour minimum wage, I don't think that comes from like a deep understanding of how the Senate operates. Even though we have a 50-50 split in the Senate, you can't just pass legislation through without appealing to more moderate Democrats like Joe Manchin and Kristen Sinema, and then 6 other Democrats that voted against advancing that today. But that, I don't know if we want to get to that. But I guess one question that I want to ask is that even though Denmark, for example, they don't have a minimum wage, they have really strengthened unions. And so their average wage, I think, is like $22 an hour. If countries can't afford to pay people a base wage that is a livable wage, then why isn't Denmark a failed state?
Denmark doesn't have.
Oh, well, next is Well, you asking, but Turk, were you trying to answer that question by raising your hand?
I can answer the question, and I can talk to my
And
original
you are,
talking
yeah,
point.
and you're next, so it makes the most sense to throw it to Turk. Sorry, Tiff, I'll write your name down.
Yeah, so Denmark's average household income is $28,950 when equating it to US dollars, which is $15 an hour. So that is still, again, back to my point, not enough for a livable wage in the United States.
They have. That's a strong welfare state. They don't have to worry about things like healthcare costs or things like that. But I'm saying they pay the equivalent of whatever, $15 an hour. How come their economy isn't crashing? You just said it couldn't. Like economies can't sustain that.
Salaries in Denmark are taxed at over 50%, which is more than double the worldwide average of 22.96. Part of these heavy taxes contribute to housing benefits for senior citizens.
They're like the happiest country in the world. If you like,
Right,
So this is
again,
very simple.
you're
I
getting
think that
taxed
people
in-
in this conversation are thinking that tax equals bad. You are paying money to private people right now for the same things that you're paying for via taxes. So right now, for example, on average, a sixth of our paychecks
You
goes
don't
to
get a
healthcare.
choice with taxes. You do with when you buy goods. You don't.
You get a choice in taxes because you vote for your
No,
leader.
you don't.
So you, as an individual, don't per se, but we as a society do. And because
Exactly.
every individual
So don't
needs
say you
healthcare,
have a choice
are
when you
forced
don't.
ultimately to get healthcare. There's not really
You
a
just
choice.
said you do, but you don't. I'm glad we admit that. And we all agree. Now, if I may, it was
Yeah,
actually my
that's
choice. It is
incorrect.
actually my turn. It is my turn, and I do not yield.
No, I hadn't
do
responded
not-
to my,
Turk-
my
Turk, it was
question.
Turk. He was still
Sorry,
going.
I
So
couldn't
then it's you now.
resist. I've been holstering that too long.
So,
Okay.
so Tiffany mentioned
you ever
the
resisted?
labor task of land care, lawn people.
Landscaping.
Basically, yeah, landscaping. So in California, the average hourly wage for that is right around $14.50, and in Texas it's only $13.91. So as it currently stands, the market in Texas can't afford to put a landscaping worker at $15 an hour. California itself can't even put it at $15 an hour because the market can't pay $15 an hour. There's also instances where
Yeah,
I
that's
think
not
it's
true.
telephone operate. It is. I'm looking at the data right here, and I posted
Really?
it
Can you
also.
post it in chat so we can see where
I
you're getting
posted
it
it
from?
in the where. I posted
But
it
you're
in the
not
whereby.
you're not speaking to California and Texas's ability to pay
Yeah.
these wages. You're just speaking of the floor wages that they offer now.
No, that's
But
the
that-
average. That means someone goes and takes this
Yeah, but that
job,
doesn't-
and that job is worth this much in labor cost.
Can I?
But that doesn't.
That's okay. Are you are equating market value with like true value, and you're also ignoring the effects of monopsony and efficiency and lots of other things that I want to bring into this conversation.
That's
if the
not
whole
what I'm
point of
talking
monopsony is
about.
that workers are paid less than their true value, then looking at market value literally cannot tell you the true value. That's the whole fucking point.
I also wanted to point out that Denmark doesn't have a minimum wage, not because they trust corporations. Unlike the United States, they have strong labor unions, and it's those labor unions who make a de facto minimum wage without government mandates. So if the right wants to end the minimum wage, I would be open to that, as long as we have massive, amazing unions.
Okay, I want to throw it over to KOE, who's been waiting for a while.
That wasn't
Thank you,
my
good
last
sir.
point. But okay.
Now, if
I'll
I
bring it
may,
back to
there
you,
is
sorry.
another factor that it's not the complete explanation, but it is one to at least consider. Is when we're looking at Denmark versus America, say, one is the fact that Denmark is among NATO allies, and so they have to spend way less on their national defense versus what we subsidize for them to actually do. So something to keep in mind when people say, look at these different European countries and look how much better they're doing than we are, something to keep in mind. But that's just one small part of it. I'm not even saying that's the entire part, just something to consider. Now, this is something my righty friends, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry that I'm doing this. I shouldn't give the lefties this weapon because it will open Pandora's box. But if you actually wanted to get people to a fucking living wage and you wanted to get people to a living standard, the easiest, cheapest way with the least amount of overhead and the way that fucks with the least amount of corporations is just a negative income tax. That's it. You pick a number. People that earn less than that, you give that back to them in their fucking tax returns. It's the least amount of overhead. It's the least amount of bullshit. It's the least. Now, I don't even like this plan. I don't even say do this, but goddamn, I'm not even into central planning, and I'm still better at it than most of these central planners.
And
with
we
that, I
already
yield
do that.
Thank you.
We already have a negative effective income tax for people that are in this discussion.
Sure. So I'm pretty sure politically the
Raise
reason
it
why we don't
higher
do a
is what you're
massive-
talking. That's it. That's it. That's all you got to do. We don't have to do all this other shit, but I'm sorry.
So the reason we don't do a massive negative income tax is mostly for political reasons, because you'd need to raise something like $1 trillion or like $2 trillion a year. And like, unless you're willing to raise your taxes by like 10-20% to pay for that, then it's not going to happen. So right now we do stuff by boosting up.
Our government can't sustain itself on the taxes it collects. It can't even pay the interest on the debt. So the idea that our taxes are somehow correlated with the running of our government is just silly. That's not the way the world works, man. It's guns, oil, and drugs that makes our dollar have any value.
That's
is this the
incorrect.
petrodollar meme? Okay, so regardless of that, like the basic idea.
It's true, man. You can not like it, but that's the world we live in. Sorry, Dems the donuts.
The reason a dollar has value is because it represents force over other people. It's basically that $10 is the ability to get someone else to do $10 of value for you. That's it. Like, money is power.
What's the name of your pupper?
Maddy, get in there.
Oh, this is Ruby.
I
Ruby,
had my little
she's
dog
cute.
Churro on earlier. How old?
She's 3 years old, or no, 3.5. Her adoptiversary was last month, so she was found in Central California, running as a stray, and now she has figured out how to open cabinets. So we've had to childproof our house, and she's great.
I'm going to use this opportunity to throw it over to Turk, who has been waiting to finish his point.
Sorry, Turk.
Yeah, so another instance of where I would think a more regional-based minimum income or minimal and whatever, y'all know what I'm saying. In California, for telephone operators, they get paid $21 and something cents, and in Texas, they get paid $13 an hour. So again, monopsony, whatever you want to call it, people in California have higher wages because they have higher cost of living. That's what the market has generated and produced. If we go to a national income or national minimum wage, there's markets that are not going to be able to pay this, guys. It would make much more sense to say, Mississippi, you can go to a minimum wage of $9 an hour or something like that, because
Do you want to abolish the minimum wage? I just want to clarify your point.
No, I like what the entire intent of the minimum wage was. It is to set a floor for the minimum wage that you can pay a person. Unfortunately, the market is more complex than just a single value, because more jobs are worth more money. You can put as much effort into a certain task. It doesn't make your labor more valuable to the product you're producing.
Boom.
If I may, there was a very fascinating piece of fiction that came out years ago. It was a great work where a guy spent 20 years out isolated alone in the woods inventing things. And by the time he came back out to the world, he had discovered, I invented a hi-fi set. Unfortunately, about 15 years after it all came out, so it wasn't really worth much. I invented a color television, but it was about 15 years after color television hit. So at the end of the day, this guy put 20 years of labor into inventing all these things, but what was the labor in essence actually worth at the end of the day?
I can't think of a more useless. I can't think of a more useless hypothetical. Like, how many Ted Kaczynski types are out there in the wilderness inventing things that haven't been invented yet?
What is the value of that labor, though? Like,
it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. That's not a fucking concern that we should be just like. What point? I don't understand.
Like, there is some things people can do that don't have value.
You keep bringing
like what?
You keep bringing up value of labor as if that's a concern. Also, the Turk that might be copywritten. Maybe you shouldn't be showing.
By the way, everybody, we are actually everybody. We are actually running out of time, so we're gonna have to wrap this up like very shortly. So.
Can we do closing
really?
statements?
No cancel culture?
We got to go move on to cancel culture. We don't have much time left if we want to get to it, right?
Can we do closing statements for this one?
Okay, yeah, you can do quick. It has to be literally 20 seconds. It was the bonus.
I'll defer my time on closing statements.
Okay.
Yeah, me too.
Matt, okay, Hutch, you get 20 seconds.
Yes. it's on the topic that we didn't hit on yet, but for advocates that are pushing for the $15 an hour minimum wage, the absolute best thing that you could possibly do to accomplish that or to help that job of being easier in the future is to help elect Democrats to the Senate in 2022. Instead of spending all your time blaming Kamala Harris for not overriding the parliamentarian, which would have been a useless gesture. Thank you. I yield the rest of my time.
Wonderful.
One party unscrutinized rule. Yay.
Anybody else who wants to make okay, let's use the name. 20 seconds.
I'll just say that I find the minimum wage debate bizarre. I've yet to hear anyone give me an explanation for why the minimum wage would be a good thing. The best I can get out of people is why it might not be a bad thing, like why it might have no effect. I haven't really heard any good arguments for why it would actually help anything. It could raise some people's wages. It could put people out of work. Why do you think that the positive effects of the former is going to be outweigh the negative effects of the latter? I can't find any general arguments for that. And it's so obvious cases where, like, if you want to help people, then at least do some sort of subsidy that's publicly funded. Why would you force an employer to subsidize someone to help someone who can't because they need help? Like, it's such a strange thing. You're punishing the person who's helping them. I probably can't really cover all the ranting I want to do in this.
Okay.
I'll just leave it there.
We're going to move it over to Tiffany and SDL, and then we'll wrap it up if nobody else wants to do it. Okay? Yep.
In my opening statement, and a lot of us have reiterated this last year's name, we've brought up many things that are beneficial when it comes to $15 minimum wage, including stimulating the economy and giving people a living wage where they can survive off of. Yeah, but yeah, you said we didn't say anything, but we did. Secondly, to the TERK, if we somehow implemented a $15 minimum wage nationally, and there were issues with it in certain states, I would be okay with fixing it at by a case by case basis. But until something like that happens, and you have no leg to stand on, I have to go with the $15 minimum wage.
Hey, SDL.
Sure. The basic points here, I laid out a lot of them are laid out in a blog that I linked in chat from No Opinion. I want to say he's like a neoliberal or something, but even he can see the light, the glorious light of minimum wage. The benefits of minimum wage, according to Aaron Doob 2019, a little meta study they did, is that doubling the minimum wage would reduce poverty on the order of 22 to 45%. And that's even including for reductions of government benefits. There's similarly a study from RINS 2018, which finds that minimum wages reduce poverty. And they're just looking at like actual income, not just like pre-tax income or whatever. They're looking at like people's actual income several years after the fact. The main reason that we don't think it reduces unemployment is due to monopsony power. Lots of good studies on that. I think AZER 2017, I'll link that one as well. And the other main thing that seems to result from minimum wage, ironically enough, is an increase in efficiency because workers shift from less productive to more productive firms.
Okay. Chris Farley.
Thank you. Now, what we've seen here, folks, unfortunately, is with whatever we implement, we're going to be, unfortunately, 6 one hand, half dozen in the other, robbing Peter to pay Paul. We're going to add a few jobs here, add a little wage here, subtract a few jobs there. So what you need to do, folks, the thing that will actually help improve your life, advocate for sound money, increase your own purchasing power. Fuck over the big guy. They're the ones that are going to have to pay the cost. You are going to see an increase in your purchasing power. Step on out into the beautiful sunlight of freedom. It's gorgeous out here.
Wonderful. I'm happy I invested in all that silver jewelry. Now we're going to go into the last topic, which is about cancel culture. This is back cancel culture and the specter around it. It could be about the Dr. Seuss thing. It could be about the recent thing with Eminem, or a wider topic about the conversation around cancel culture. Of course, we don't have time for intros, but I know that Dronetek was really interested in talking about this topic in particular, so I think I'm going to give it to him first.
Well, I think it's... I guess I got a lot to say about it. First of all, I think we all agree it's way bigger than just the Dr. Seuss books and all that. I don't know if you guys agree or not, but it seems to be part of a larger pattern of general widespread censorship, just basically shutting down of all dissent across the board. And that's not generally something the good guys are doing. And I'm just wondering what your rationalization is for that.
Can we just clarify the Dr. Seuss situation? His estate voluntarily chose to take 6 books Out of rotation. I'm not sure what they did because
After
they had
having a
racial-
bunch of
think it was
people
5
yell at them
books.
for
They're being
taking
pressured.
Wait. I thought you guys liked the free market. This is a
Right.
private estate responding to the demands of the free market.
Responding to threats from a vocal minority.
Responding to what the market is telling them in like
No market.
evaluating
I don't like what the
impact
market
on their business. You know what the best part? You know what the best part about the Dr. Seuss situation is too? Since self-canceling and removing 6 books from circulation, the sales for all Dr. Seuss books has skyrocketed. So they are quite literally profiting off of self-canceling. And if that's not capitalism and the beauty of it, I don't know what you people want.
Now, if I may, I would like to just put this as a little aside. When people are worried about things being unavailable and people now suddenly can't get their hands on something, this is one of the hallmarks of actual English liberty, where it's not just the right of the person who speaks to be heard. It is also the right of the audience to listen and to hear and to be exposed. And anytime you limit yourself or limit the speech of another, you make yourself a prisoner of your own action because now you are not exposed to a new idea.
Okay,
So that's one of the great dangers of this cancel culture that we face ourselves.
okay.
And when we're talking about what's going to happen in the future, we, all of us, every one of us hope that wiser people in the future will forgive us our sins and failings, as we're going to forgive those who came before us who were imperfect people yet still achieved. And if any of you on this panel think that you're cancel free, the fucking future generations will damn you because you carry this thing, a cell phone, a computer that has coltan in it and other conflict minerals. Do you know the untold suffering that has to go down for you to have this little creature comfort? Oh, but we had to live in the world that we lived in. So did the people that came before us.
Okay,
And that is the danger of this cancel culture.
If I could pose a potentially useless hypothetical. You're this champion of free speech, right? You shouldn't close yourself off to ideas. We should never like
can't
put
wait to
earmuffs
hear
on,
this.
that kind of things. If someone walks into Starbucks and starts like spouting off white nationalist rhetoric, like in the lobby, right? They're echoing Nazi rhetoric. They're wearing Nazi regalia. They're talking about white supremacy. They're asshole, right? Do you not think that Starbucks, as a private company, it would be in their interest to make sure that that person isn't allowed to be in their
Or any crazy person spouting insane bullshit, which happens on a regular basis, which isn't what we're talking about and is a complete deflection from what I asked, which was the widespread. What's happening right now is big tech is acting at the behest of government, big government, to silence opposition they don't like. And you guys are cool with that because it's being used to get the ends that you want. So explain that.
So as someone who worked in big tech, I can answer. So here's the thing.
I'm not a complete.
So I'll be transparent. Like I used to work for Google, and here's the thing. Like I think it's absolutely valid to critique and question the impact that big tech has on discourse, on other things. But this framing is so disingenuous. There are plenty of critiques. If I will let you know in just a minute. But yeah, like it just seems so misplaced because the way that we think of cancel culture or what it's been labeled as right now seems to me like it's more consequences culture. Because here's the thing, free speech, no, because here's the thing, free speech is something that is protected where you are protected from government retaliation. However, if a private company chooses and sees exactly. Like if a private company sees that your speech or your actions or anything are a threat to their profit making, and if it's not, obviously there are protected categories, but like that, they have every right to discontinue it or to terminate an employee or whatever. And as someone who's a fan of the free market, I'm really shocked that that's not something you support.
Yeah, Maddy
you can support the free market and still criticize culture.
Maddy pretty much stole everything I was just about to say. The thing
Sorry,
is,
Tiff.
it's okay. The thing is, it's a private corporation, and they have a TOS. So, the reason you're like a lot of
which is very nebulous and used to justify.
The reason a lot of right wingers are getting deplatformed and the like isn't that there's some big conspiracy to shut them down. It's that they don't know how to not violate TOS. It's because they're too dumb fuck to be dog whistly enough that they don't get like yeeted off.
Well,
the
that's very convenient for
platform.
you and your agenda.
It's actually very convenient for me, so I
Right.
have to listen to you guys bullshit.
And you can just broadly,
but
you
it's
can just
the truth,
broadly
though.
judge all speech that's
Anytime you
inconvenient to
silence
your
somebody, you
agenda.
make yourself a prisoner of your own actions.
Okay,
Didn't
so
Trump try to
let's
cancel Nike
Let's
at
get a
one
moment.
point?
Let's do a moment, okay?
Nobody, people have a choice to buy or
give me a moment. I wanted to
there's a big difference. How can you not see that? I really wonder.
Okay, so please, everybody. I know this topic is getting heated right off the bat, but let's try to do this in an orderly fashion. I have LU tried to talk earlier, but was stopped. So I want LU to go. Then I'm gonna go to Dronetek because he was trying to respond, and then we're gonna go to Hutch. Okay, so we're gonna go in that order. Sound good? Wonderful.
Okay,
I'm gonna chug beer.
I think we're kind of talking about a few different issues. They might be kind of related, but I think we should still try to focus on one thing at a time here. We're talking. It started with Dr. Zeus. Now, I don't think that's really a cancel culture thing. I think the issue there, just for some background, which you haven't really provided, there are some Dr. Zeus books, and it was found that some of them have some like kind of, images that you wouldn't put in a children's book today. They're a bit un-PC. And I'll admit that like some of them are like something should be done about that. I question whether I don't think they're intentionally racist, but they're adhering to sort of social norms of a bygone era. So what should we do about that? I'm uncomfortable with those books being taken out of publication entirely. If people want to stop reading those books to their kids for that reason, or we want to like change the images in the book to sort of modernize them a little bit, that's more reasonable. But having them, it seems weird to me that they had to be taken out of public. You can't even buy those books anymore, and that's a bit scary to me and seems completely unnecessary. So, is that? I mean, does anybody disagree with that? Like, shouldn't we at least be able to buy those books as adults?
Before Tiffany, when I talk, nobody talks. So I'm going to, for the sake of chat, read what was in some of these books, because like just talking about racist imagery without like knowing what racist. Does anybody object to me like just saying what was in
racist?
Okay, well I'm gonna read them quickly.
Explicitly racist.
An Asian person is portrayed wearing a conkle hat, holding chopsticks, and eating from a bowl. If I ran a zoo, it includes a drawing of two barefooted African men wearing what appear to be grass skirts with their hair tied above their heads. There's two. There's a few others, but there's two quickly I could find.
Explain to me what's wrong there.
Do you think that's not racist?
I love black people. I have no problem with. I love black people. I have no problem with
that
black
has nothing to do
Why
with
is that
whether or
racist?
not this is racist.
Do you want to show the African image?
That's what you're going to come at me with.
The worst
so
one.
I'm telling you.
You want to show that?
Explain to me what's the problem there.
I can do
That's all
story
I
time.
asked you.
I'm
not to call me a
asking-
racist, which you're going to do.
I'm not
Tell me
calling
what's
you
wrong.
a racist. I'm asking
Somebody in chat
you
could
if you
send me the image of
genuinely
Af-
believe that is not racist, that depiction of an
So,
Asian
if you can
man
send it to me, Elliot,
is
I appreciate
not
that.
racist.
So this is one
So
of the
if,
pages. This is one of the pages from McElligot's pool that is supposedly going to get this book marked off. Some fish from the tropics, all sunburned and hot, might decide to swim up. Well, they might they? Racing up north for a chance to get cool. Full steam ahead for McElligot's pool. This is why book is getting banned, because
What's
there's
the
a
name of that book
gentleman
again?
sitting on an island. Looks like he's drinking like a martini or something, but he's wearing at the time racially. I don't even know what the right term is to use anymore, because I'm afraid I'll get you banned, Dylan. So that's why this page is getting banned.
I think it was more than that. What was the name of that book?
Yeah, I'm pretty
McElligot's
sure.
pool. I can read the other
There's-
one too if you
What?
want.
What
I
was
just
the
want
name
to
of
ask
it?
you guys something. Are you
Okay,
guys in the Mystery
so,
Science Theater 3000? Have you ever
I'm
seen
just
that?
gonna say that
God,
I'm
it's
looking
been
at the
years,
images
but yeah.
that was just sent to me by LU, and I don't know if I can show these on Twitch. Actually, can I? Am I allowed? Like these are.
Twitch might be tough,
I don't
but
know.
like Discord,
say
you
with
could
Okay,
probably.
so
on
I'm gonna put it into
YouTube won't
Discord,
care.
and I'll link
Yeah.
it in chat. But just to be safe, I will not be showing it on stream. I'll probably leave a link to it for all the YouTube viewers. Okay.
So for another page from McElligot's pool, this is a man that's in Tibet. He's got a pointy red and white striped hat with a really long beard. That's racist.
Well,
So this
the que-
image,
the-
like,
Is it
it's bad.
racist though?
I think the most charitable interpretation.
You looking at it?
A charitable
I mean, show it to me
interpretation
again.
of
Show it to me again.
How
I
this-
didn't see it. I didn't see it.
I like how
Look at I put it in the Discord chat if you want to look at it.
Dylan
okay.
said I probably shouldn't show these images, and the Turk's over here showing those images.
He's like,
Well,
here.
no, he's showing a different image than the one I'm talking about.
Yeah,
too.
this is
But
a
is it
different
still
that's
appropriate though?
I guess.
Slip my glasses
no,
on for this one.
So the stuff
It's just
that's
an
in the ga-
artistic interpretation of people. I mean, do you think that's really turning kids racist or something, like against black people?
No,
I mean,
we're
well, it
saying
just
that
seems
that
like
is
now it's
racist,
getting
not that
more-
it's turning anything racist.
It's-
We're just saying this thing is a racist depiction.
As
Look,
I understand,
here's my thing.
Can you
I-
differentiate?
Come on.
I mean,
So
That's not
most,
an
I'm just-
most
argument.
of the time
was
when
that-
you're
Can
reading
you?
these books to kids, you're reading the words and they're not even listening to you, and they look at pictures. They don't even look at
No,
the
but if
pictures,
kids,
man.
if young kids, if the most of what they're being
make an
exposed to, or if some of what they're being exposed to at a really young age exclusively plays into stereotypes and tropes, if that's like the only thing that they're being exposed to, then they're going to have a really warped image of those people in their minds. This is not
Then-
like
okay,
a
then
controversial.
you need
this
to
isn't-
go
wait, hold
talk
on,
to
wait,
the
wait.
Obamas and have them call
Okay.
out publicly that the Dr.
Listen,
Seuss
this
thing
isn't
was a
new.
bad.
Based on what you just said,
Wait.
on what you just said, then our society is being taught to violently hate white people. Will you agree with that?
No,
Absolutely fucking
No, of course
you
not.
Weirdo.
No.
No, because it's not fucking true.
That
Hold on.
picture,
Let me
that
just like.
picture is making people hate black people, but the daily drumbeat of white people being to blame for everything. And if you're not a white traitor, you're a white supremacist. No, that's cool.
Holy shit! Well, there's a lot to unpack here.
Yeah,
There's
let's get into it.
Language,
We don't have the time.
cultural norms, cultural
Okay, is
sentiments
that done?
evolve.
Okay, I'm back on screen now. Okay.
Language, cultural norms evolve over time. We can all agree that if we use the sort of language that was typically used in 1950, we would be rightfully admonished in 2021. Correct?
Yes.
So what you're
Dumbo
calling
needs to be self-canceled by Walt Disney. They need to retract and take off the
don't
market
know fucking
the
fuck
video
all
and
about-
the movie for all.
Why is it
Dumbo.
every time left
I don't know
wingers get
fuck all
power,
about
they
what-
want to censor and shut up everybody? Answer that.
Hey, well, hold on. Should James Gunn have been fired from Disney? Should Kathy Griffin have had lost her CNN spot on New Year's Eve?
James Gunn was Galaxy.
Hold on,
right?
wait, hold on. Should
How about the Dixie
Chicks? Hold on.
Chicks?
Should
Yeah.
the Dixie Chicks have been canceled in 2004 for speaking out against
For
George
one,
W.
the
Bush?
Dixie Chicks
You
were
act-
canceled for a
hold on.
second.
You act like this is something that is exclusive to the left, and
It's different when you do
right-wing
it, I know.
politics have been engaged in cancel culture for fucking decades. You want to talk about gangster rap music in the 90s? Who was
I
trying to
grew up
cancel
on
that?
it. I grew up on it. So fuck
Okay,
off.
so who was trying to cancel that at the time?
The
Exactly.
conservative right,
This
I
is
know.
not. This is not. So
Why is
stop
it different when you do it? I'm not a I know you think everybody who disagrees with you is conservative. That doesn't mean I am. You keep trying to
You know-
attach that to me.
I don't know what
You
the
did kind
fuck
of
that
stumble
means.
on
You're
something that's been an.
It's like it's a
if I may,
Marxist,
I'm terribly
actually, to
sorry.
be fair.
But you have stumbled onto something rather interesting, Hutch, that I've noticed that in the 90s, the folks who were humorless and couldn't take a joke were your over-the-top right-wing Christian conservatives. And now, weirdly enough, we've had this switch where it's now the far leftists who are unable to take a joke. And I even made the Hey, if I may, I even made the comment on the Tomfoolery show one time that it's really unfortunate. Punk rock just ain't the same. It's a bunch of pro-government bootlickers who can't take a joke.
Yeah, conservatives are the real punk rock now. Yes, this is such a
That's why
spicy take.
so many famous
We're
comedians
the
are
spicy
notorious
memes.
right wingers.
All the spicy memes are right wing.
There are a bunch. What are you talking about?
I said good ones.
All the
Yeah.
dankest memes are all right wing.
Comedy is subjective, isn't it?
Meme.
You all think that one chick is funny, the rape chick.
So I've got
Gabriel?
a question for the panel.
Who are you? What?
Should this book be banned?
I don't know what's in that book.
I don't have-
Nobody knows what's in
don't-
that book. Like, what?
Not
I don't
holding
have
it.
how-
Okay,
my glasses
so
on.
books like you do, Turk. So I don't know.
No, my boys read this book. I would love for them to learn how to go to the bathroom.
Dirk,
I
that
don't
isn't
care if
self
it's female.
reading
Amen.
material. I thought that
I
was
cannot
okay.
wait for that.
Okay, so-
I know. I'm like,
like-
don't blame your sons for having that book. That's
Yeah,
your
to
book.
help him potty train.
I reused it. My
He's
daughter
sitting
used
there in
it to
diapers
learn,
right
and the
now.
boys read it.
This is the consumers of all stripes, left and right, exercise their voice and try to influence big companies to capitulate to their demands all the time. It is not something that
How
is
does that
exclusive.
excuse what's happening right now?
I'm not saying it. Well, I don't know what you mean by
So-
excuses. It depends on what we're talking about. But my main point directed at you is this is not something that's like a left wing issue in this country.
Right now, it is.
Okay, so who the
It's
fuck tried to
not.
boycott? Who the fuck tried to boycott
is.
Nike?
Josh
Who the fuck?
Howley. Josh
Groups
Howley.
like BLM,
Josh Howley's the senator from Missouri. Just tried to push to have credit card companies stop doing business with Pornhub. This is in the past year. He tried to cancel Pornhub. Trump also tried to cancel Nike at some point. Like today, Trump tried to cancel fucking Carl Rove.
So
and
your
call him on
excuse
Fox
for what you're
News.
doing is that somebody else
so
did
it's
it.
not. No, but what I'm saying is that this is not just simply like a left wing issue. This is something that
You're just
happens across
deflecting.
the political
That's
spectrum.
what you're doing.
President was just
I am
kicked
setting
off
the
a major
foundation to have a real
platform. This is
conversation.
kind of an issue for the right. That's
Okay.
why
And don't
we're kind of-
forget
okay, we're
when
gonna
they
slow- we're
tried
gonna
to
slow this-
boycott Keurig.
Let's go slow this down
That's
for
why
a
I'm
second.
not a Christian conservative. I'm not Christian.
We're gonna slow this down for a moment, okay? So, does anybody want to speak? Please raise your hand. We're just gonna slow it down for that process. Okay, Turk was the first, then KOE, then Tiff.
Well-
Okay, so Turk, you can go first.
Yeah, so I'm pro free speech. I think people should be able to say what they should be able to say. My question is the slippery slope question. If today Dr. Seuss is getting 6 books censored, at what point should we expect Walt Disney to retract and erase stuff from their archives? At what point do we start to see major, probably cornerstones of Americana start to self-censor or get taken off the market because a radical mob whose mind changes by the day demands certain actions? At what point does it stop? What is safe content? Is this podcast safe content? At what point does this end?
It won't.
I mean, this podcast is clearly too hot for YouTube, too hot for any of the major platforms. But it is the essential question we all have to ask ourselves, unfortunately, with this cancel culture. And is there anybody in the audience or anybody within the sound of my voice that feels that they're not grown up enough to handle some rather unpopular works and some rather unpopular opinions and some things that might actually provoke you and some things that might actually be uncomfortable? Is there anybody in this audience that you could think of that you would like to decide for you what you are allowed to read and what you're allowed to know and who you would like to decide for you, whether you can decide whether you can hear something you might need to hear? Like
Honestly,
sorry.
Honestly, after the foreign policy discussion, I mean, I don't know. I'm just
Well,
kidding.
anyway.
You continue. I'm sorry.
Is there anybody on the
No,
panel
what-
who'd be against, for the people who are okay with these Dr. Seuss books being unpublished, wouldn't it be strictly better if they were continued to be published, but there was just some kind of disclaimer or notice somewhere that says, hey, by the way, there's some imagery that, some parents might not want to show their kids today. Just keep that in mind if you're a parent. Wouldn't that be a
yes.
strictly better
So
for
long
society, I guess? If that
long as
happened
there's
instead,
actually
so that at least
access to
adults
it.
could then choose to buy these books and read them if they want. Like
can
I
I
had
As
to
just
long
read
as
that
these
people
books
have at least
just to see
access,
what
that's perfect.
right?
But
Okay.
what we're trying to do is pick a nominee to decide what's best for everybody to read, and everybody has very different tastes. And there is no one fit to decide for you or you or you or you or you out in the audience what is fit for you to read. That person does not exist. Nobody has the foreknowledge, and we have no idea what the negative consequences could be. And furthermore, you have to be suspect of the motives of anyone who would try to do so.
So one of the things that I like to think about in these contexts is
After
what
STL, we're going to
policy-
Tiffany.
What policy would y'all like changed? If you don't want to see books like this canceled, what law would you change and what would it do?
I don't think this is a legal issue. Like I think you have every right to not publish any book that you don't want to publish. I have no objection to that. But the reason that they unpublished these books is in response to a culture which would be very upset with them if they continued to publish it or implemented the solution that I proposed, probably. So, and that is what I don't like. I don't like that culture. And that's what I'm criticizing here. I'm not criticizing the law or proposing any change in the law.
What about culture that pressured establishments pre-civil rights to serve blacks and whites together? Like what? Like
I don't see how that's analogous to this at all.
Why
So-
not? These are like market
I think you can
pressures.
critique good.
This is just why shouldn't Why is it good that we're not even able to buy these books? That adults are not even able to buy these books to see what's in them.
SocDoneLeft.
No real good reason.
I mean, all I was gonna say is like, if an adult was really dedicated to getting this, you can obtain these books on certain websites very easily.
I mean, you have to pirate them. That's not. That's kind of.
You can go on Amazon.
Yeah, well, I mean, this seems like an argument for the elimination of intellectual property. But that's outside the current context.
There's a never-ending cyclone of anxiety because we're trying to play whack-a-mole to try and
was anyone in here like reading Dr.
Seuss
Seuss books night and
happen.
day and is just like really anxious that their doctor?
I just want to
get rid of everyone's anxiety.
We gotta throw it
If it
over.
was your literature, you would have a completely different opinion. Have some self-awareness, dude. Yeah.
Well, no, I was talking. One moment. Tiffany, you've been waiting for a while, so I want to throw it over to you.
Honestly, it's been going so long, I kind of forget what I was going to say, but I'll try. The point was that the Dr. Seuss books was stopped not just because like a small fringe of people who didn't agree with it pressured them to. It's the majority of people recognize that this is bad for business and this is not acceptable. That's why a lot of companies will have months dedicated to marginalized communities or LGBT people because, they have virtual signaling, but they know that there's a lot of people who support those movements and not a lot of people who support, racist books. In regards to what the last username is saying, you can make that argument about a lot of stuff. Why can't you go down to the local Barnes & Noble and buy your copy of Mein Kampf on the rack? Why can't you go to? Why can't you Target? I don't think you can.
Look at all the anti-books you can buy. They're all over.
Kindle or paperback.
Wait, can you actually buy Mein Kampf?
Yeah, but that has has a pretty broad.
Yeah, I wouldn't either. Why can't you go down to Walmart and buy your
very mainstream?
Why can't you go down to Walmart and buy your discount clan hood and tiki torches in the
Who
costume
gives a shit
aisle?
about tiki torches?
No, the point is why can't you sell these things? And it's because they're not popular, and companies realize that. And if you really want these books that bad, you can get them, but that's not the point of not releasing these books. Times are changing, and if you can't change with them, that's your problem. Additionally, I like how people are complaining about cancel culture when literally during the Trump administration, my rights were under attack. They were trying to. I'm trans, and they wouldn't let me go into homeless shelters. I wasn't allowed to get served by certain healthcare providers, especially depending on what state you're in. There's a lot. I couldn't join the military. There's a lot of reasons I got attacked, and that affects my life way more than your goddamn Dr. Seuss books.
So when does this book get banned?
No, I disagree with you actually, because those Dr. Seuss books are just a symptom of the larger problem that we're seeing in, like last username said, in our culture. We used to be a culture of openness and free discussion, and we could do this. We can't anymore. We can't even talk anymore.
We used to be a culture of openness. How do you think it felt to be like a black person or a gay person or a trans person like 50 years ago? We're more 50 open
years
now.
ago?
Yeah.
I agree.
Okay, so
we can have that
open.
kind of moral progress and still have access to books that are, even if they're incompatible with those morals.
The thing is, you guys don't
read things.
The thing
so
is,
last the reason that I focus on policy is because to me this seems like the market functioning, and so if you want the market to stop functioning, but the idea is that we can't change the culture like on our own.
Yes,
so the question is
how? What do you mean? Why not?
So you can take
we're a bunch of Twitch streamers.
Can I ask a question quick? Okay, so I heard a few times like some people think this is market functioning. I heard Dronetek say that this is strong armed. So this is actually, I think, an interesting discussion actually from this, right? Is this the market functioning, or is it being manipulated by outside forces? Because is a boycott, for example, people would have boycott the estate for selling these stuff. Would that be the market functioning? People just choosing not to buy products from this service or good?
Yeah.
That would be.
Restricting people's access to information is never moving in the direction of freedom. Ever.
This happening isn't
people's access
anything
to
new, by the
information
way.
of any kind, you're less free by that much.
Drone,
property rights.
Give me a second. Drone, nobody heard what you said because like some other people were talking for a second. Could you say that again? I'm sorry.
No, I was just saying people kept bringing up the Dixie Chicks, but the huge difference there is that it had nothing to do with like mass media and things like that. It was just people deciding they didn't want to buy from Dixie Chicks, but they got huge anyway. So it's kind of like the Dr. Seuss thing,
It was
but-
absolutely mass media.
And Amazon are refusing to sell those books.
It was 100% mass. The reason why it got so much coverage is because it got picked up in the media, and then it caught fire, like amongst conservative evangelical Christians.
I agree, but
across
people
the
just
country.
decided not to buy it.
Because they were
because of
right,
Fox
but how is that
News
not count-
using their
People
24-hour
didn't
news
stop
cycle to
selling it
disparage
because they were
them.
afraid of backlash.
Nearly the boogeyman you think it is. I'm sorry.
How is that different? Afraid of backlash. How is that different than a publisher?
A lot of Republicans yelling.
Wait, I
They're
can't.
afraid
Okay,
of
I
backlash.
have
Too
no
many
cl-
people.
Wait. Okay, I didn't hear anything of what was just said because there was two people yelling at the same time. So let's do we'll go back to hand raising because we have 18 minutes left in the show. So I want to make sure everybody gets time to talk. So can people just raise their hand if they want to talk? I see multiple people raising their hand. Okay, it's going to be. I saw Turk raise it first, then Tiffany, then Hutch. Okay. Turk,
Yeah, so
Tiffany.
mine's going to be pretty quick. So basically, what I would rather have happen here is me knowing how the society works right now. I would love to take my book, McElligot's Pool, and read it to my kids and go and say, hey, guys, you know this picture here? This is not how there actually are in the world. I would love to teach inclusivity to my kids with a actual reference of how things used to be and how it was bad and how we can make it better going into the future. I don't need it to be stripped from the annals of history. I can teach my kids stuff is bad. I'm not an evil person.
Tiffany?
First off, before I get into what I was going to say, I agree, Tech. You can teach your kids what's right and what's wrong, but you don't need a Dr. Seuss book to do that. You should be able to do that with in a variety of different ways, not needing a book to reference. Secondly, it was in response to Dylan Burns in his question about whether boycotting is a viable response. At least I don't think so on either the right or the left, especially the right. They tried boycotting Nike. Nike's sales went up. They tried boycotting Keurig. Their sales went up. And even a lot of leftists in pro-LGBTQ communities tried to boycott Chick-fil-A. Didn't happen. Chick-fil-A is more popular than ever. So I don't think boycotting is as viable as people make it out to be. You'd need a significant amount of the population to join in if you want to get anything done there.
Okay, next is going to be Hutch, then Socialism Done Left.
I just want to throw out a pitch for the 3 albums by the Dixie Chicks called Home, Fly, and Wide Open Spaces. They make music worthy of angels. It's beautiful music, and they decided to speak out against George W. Bush because he was a fucking
By the way,
idiot.
isn't it no longer
And,
Dixie Chicks?
You guys love them now, I thought.
That's right.
I thought you guys loved them
For the
now.
record, sir,
Chicks.
and again, you don't know me. I've always loved the Dixie Chicks. I have been
longer Dixie Chicks.
consistent
Okay.
of
They're
my
called
love
the
for the
Chicks
Dixie
now.
Chicks.
Now the Chicks.
They're called the Chicks.
Now the Chicks.
Oh, that's
I
right,
hate
yeah.
saying that though. God damn
I
it.
know. It's not as
All right.
catchy.
The Chicks. They make beautiful music, and they spoke out against the president, and the right wing of this country fucking canceled them. It
Well, that's pretty much
happens-
all we get is speaking out against the right wing of this country. Don't you agree? No?
Absolutely. Take a look at the top 10 performing posts on Facebook any of the last like fucking 100 weeks, and you're going to see it dominated by right wingers. Right wingers have a space in this media. They like to pretend like they're persecuted, and they don't have a voice while writing an op-ed
Where
in
is
the
it?
Washington Post about how conservatives don't have a voice in this country. It's such bullshit. Like
They're being demonized in the media. Every day, history media.
Like the Dixie Chicks were demonized, and they make beautiful
No,
music, and
they're
everyone
talking
should
about
listen to those
bombing them and
albums.
deprogramming them and shit like that. Really?
I don't know what that
It's
means.
not at all the same. They're talking about doing this stuff to
It's
75
literally
million.
exactly the same. There's
Okay,
no
I don't think
difference.
so. We're talking about dehumanizing like 75 million Americans, talking about deprogramming them and
Sir, the
literally
lead
drone
singer-
striking them.
Sir, the lead singer of the Dixie
Sitting
Chicks received
president was
multiple
not
death
allowed to
threats.
communicate with
She received
voters.
multiple death threats from conservatives that were fucking incredulous at
I've
the idea
received
that a
death
country
threats.
music star would
cares?
badmouth George W. Bush. And somebody's got to stick up for her.
All right, Jack, I'm going to
All
throw
right.
it over to Socialism Done Left, and this is going to be Maddy afterwards.
All I wanted to say here is that I think this conversation is really interesting because the suggestion that like certain firms that are like publishing books which are perceived as racist, the idea that they can't make a choice based on whether it be like forceful pushback, activism, like free market, presumably these will all be features of the free market. People organizing to do like causes or parts of consumers doing things freely, presumably. So all these should be within the
They can't
market
make a choice.
perspective. So the question is simply, if you don't like this, if you want to change it, how should you go about opposing this This is the same thing that people do on Twitter. Oh, well, Twitter will ban you. That's just the market. That's a firm doing so. If you think
it's just the market, like
that's it. So you
this
need an
this is a
alternative to do
terrible
so.
straw man, right? Like I think free markets are good. I do not think that free markets solve all problems, and that once there's a free market, it's impossible to complain about anything else.
Yeah, and so then you need state intervention. So the question is, what intervention do you
No,
want?
you don't need intervention. We can solve problems without taking away the free.
You know, honestly,
we have this
when you
black
look
and
at
white fallacy, right?
websites like
Like
Google
if we have
and
a free market
Twitter
and there's still problems, then I guess we can't have a free market. No, there's
if I
problems
may,
that
if I may,
don't have anything to do with the free market. We solve those problems in other ways. I think we can solve. I think this is a problem not of the lack of free markets. It's a problem with culture. The problem is that the market is, these people are responding to the market pressure, and the market pressure is coming from a culture that I don't think is healthy. And I think we could change. And I'm trying to change that by encouraging people, like, don't freak out if a book exists that has stuff you don't like in it. We should have access to information, even if you think it's bad.
Okay, KOE, then Maddy, because KOE, I'll give you the chance because you've been trying to get in for a little bit, okay?
Okay, I was just about to say that if we're going to really look at companies like Google and Twitter, and you look at the massive amounts of taxpayer subsidized bandwidth that they consume in a single day just to keep themselves going, it is a little cute to call them purely free market. Just because that was the one little point I wanted to throw in there. That, you know, they can't even go a single day without the massive amount of taxpayer subsidized bandwidth that they consume from day to day. So it is just a little cute to call them strictly free market, but just a little something out. I'm a farmer, just planting seeds in the minds of all of you beautiful people.
Throw it over to Maddy.
Yeah. So when here's what I think is happening, and here's why cancel culture is all of a sudden made its way to the front of headlines to make its way to the 24-hour news cycle on Fox News. It's interesting that they went all in on it now that Trump is out of office, and all of a sudden this is what they've deemed the most important that the public needs to know about. And cancel culture really is just this boogeyman that people have come up with to explain away bad behavior, and then when people in power experience consequences. So I almost like to think of it as consequence culture, because when you make a mistake, and we all do, by the way, there should be consequences. Now, there's debate over what those consequences should be, but like this isn't like, and it's just it blows my mind. And I mean, I get it. The GOP had a lot of time to fill with the recent CPAC conference. So of course they had to find new things to get their geriatric audience outraged about. And it feels like so convenient that these things happen all of a sudden when there are so many other things that are far more important. And it's interesting, again, that a dead man's family's trust, who chose to remove his books out of circulation, it's not Cat in the Hat. It's not like his more popular works either. It's not like they're removing Dr. Seuss entirely. They just made the decision to remove some problematic books, which is well within their rights. So I just find it interesting that this specifically
is anybody denying
is
that it's within their rights.
What's fueling it.
So there is rumors around that the Cat in the Hat is actually someone that's playing blackface. So yeah, I wouldn't expect that in a couple of years that this also could be banned because it depicts someone playing.
He's awful white.
So last
Who
username,
whispered that to you?
It's on the internet. It's got to be true.
What site is it on?
I don't know. Google it. That's a good defense. Right?
www.imright.com, the most reliable website.
The desire to censor things has been near universal. It's not like a new thing, and I have little to reason to believe that.
What
it's
do you
like
mean near universal?
And in the past, like you
Look at it can't
any
change and
time
hasn't
period.
changed. I don't think that's true.
Look at literally any time period, and you'll find people trying to censor the writings of their opponents. It goes back to fucking Google.
Right.
There were whole wars about
So
this.
first of all, your suggestion that this has
right.
never changed ever, I find unlikely. Second of all, just because it's been around a long time, does that mean it's a good thing?
No, the argument is that it's somewhat immalleable about human nature. Is the argument?
Why is it immalleable?
Because it seems like it's literally all societies that people want to censor things they don't like. So the question is, if there's something immalleable
Why,
about
why can we buy Mein Kampf? Like at some point it was decided in history that that we should be able to buy that book, even though there's like no debate that it has some horrendously dangerous stuff.
He was one of the most consequential.
But there was a
political
culture
leaders.
that said that book, that we should be able to buy that book.
He was one of the most
He'd be able
impactful
to
and
study
consequential
historical
political
That culture
leaders.
seems to have changed.
Wait,
I think
wait.
if Mein Kampf was published today, it wouldn't be published. It would
Look,
It
it would
still
be
is
unpublished
published.
the way that Dr.
It still
Seuss
is
was.
published because he was one of the.
And
because
Dr.
he was
Seuss's
Can I
books
say
have
something
led a
real quick?
lot of children to
Wait.
happiness and learning a lot of family values that prop up the attitudes of younger children.
One moment. Hutch has been trying to say something over and over. Hutch.
No, I'm just saying,
After
like
Hutch,
the
please.
Mein Kampf issue, like this, we're talking about one of the most impactful and consequential historical leaders in the history of the world. That is a perfectly plausible reason why people would have access to his personal writings while he was in prison or whatever.
I mean, Dr.
Can I say
Seuss
something real
is
quick?
kind
So-
of consequential too, I guess.
Drone.
Maybe not as
So-
not as much, but
Not as much as Hitler.
I keep saying like
no,
we're hung
but
up on this
still,
book, and
Dr.
it's
Seuss, everybody knows him. Like, why shouldn't?
Oh,
I think people are curious to see the things that he did in the
let me
past
take
that
this-
are controversial.
Let me take this
What?
baton and pass it to Drone. Okay.
no. I just want to say like there are. It's. I've been saying this over and over. It's bigger than the books, but look at the monuments. Okay, we had these Confederate monuments that were like, oh yeah, it seems like an obvious thing. Yeah, let's take these down. There's these horrible symbols, and let's take them down. Fine. And Trump actually said, if you guys remember, during that infamous Charlottesville press conference, he said that next will be Thomas Jefferson in Washington, and he made an argument. And if you guys remember, the media went off on him at the time, and they said, "Oh, you're crazy. You need to open a history book." Hold on, let me finish.
Yes,
And Acosta did a couple pieces where he's like, the president, this is white supremacist lingo to compare the Confederate statues to Washington and Jefferson, and he needs to open a history book. Guess what? Trump was right, because that's exactly the next target, and Rushmore's a target, and eventually the American flag will be the target. All of America will be the target. So this is an obvious like slope. It's a real slippery slope that we were really on.
Can I ask you a question?
how do you guys
Dronetek?
defend it?
A personal one. If you don't want me to, I am the host. So I'm not supposed to. But can I ask you a question?
Yeah, go for it.
So would you say that the Mount Rushmore situation is a little different since it has to do with native land and tribes who think that is disputed with the federal government? It's a little different than just like cancel culture?
It's just no. I mean,
Destruction
I'm
of
sorry,
art
it's
is-
not, because it's just part of erasing American culture and replacing it with something. And the people that are driving this are all Marxists and communists.
Wait,
so what are they replacing it with? I don't know.
Isn't that what we did to the native mountain that was there before,
Yes,
which was a spiritual
It
icon?
is. Well, no, I think I'm not 100% on the history of that side, but I think it's a little bit more complicated than that. But yeah, in a sense we did. But if we acknowledge that that's wrong, why would we do it again?
Okay,
To
well,
me, it's
let's-
destroying
isn't that the
art.
point,
You
though?
can't do that. You can't destroy art like that. This is our connection to our history and our past, whether it was right or wrong. There's giant statues made of
Sure.
very precious stones of the ancient pharaohs of Egypt. A lot of assholes, but we keep the statues nonetheless because that is how the art of the day was created. And I
Okay.
couldn't-
let me go back to the wait. I
Blow
gotta
shit
go. I
up.
gotta
Blow
go to the
statues
list
up.
because we have 6 minutes left.
Fair
Turk,
enough.
then SDL, then Tiff. Okay.
Yeah, this is quick. So the whole reason why Dr. Seuss is in the news right now is because he was not being showcased in the Read Across America anymore, which happens to be held on March 2nd, which is his birthday. And the reason why they have the Read Across America Day is it encourages kids to embrace books and foster a love of reading. That's why people have celebrated Dr. Seuss. That's why President Obama and his First Lady liked reading their books, because there are a lot of good values that Dr. Seuss has brought to the world. Yeah, people can misinterpret some of the stuff in his pages, but everything could be misinterpreted given enough time.
Next is gonna be SDL.
Yeah, I mean, I think this conversation is like, as usual with most culture war conversations, just utterly unproductive. We're talking about things which are very hard to quantify, hard to prove have any real world impact. It's hard to actually care about any of this whatsoever. That's why I keep trying to pivot towards like policy or other issues that are broader. Like, should there be intellectual property? Should anyone be able to access these books? If you want to talk about like general cancellations and general like how the market functions, then talk about those. Don't talk about fucking Dr. Seuss, and don't talk about like Marxists destroying like our culture by eliminating like a statue or something.
It's all
These
part
are
of the
just
same
not
thing.
productive. Yes, they could be.
It is. It absolutely is. Come on my channel. Let's argue. Good.
So they could be useful examples.
SDL, do you think policy is the only thing
They don't get the broader
worth discussing?
issue, so they make it pretty much worthless. Yeah.
Like, do you think there are some problems that are best
I think
solved
Tiffany might have
culturally
had
by just
something that
changing
was
social
wanting to
norms?
be
So
said.
Yeah,
you
but
like to hop in right after last when it's always my turn. So, all right, I
Well-
just wanted to build off what sorry.
I will say that when somebody goes, that doesn't mean it's like a perfectly. Or if somebody wants to respond to a statement, they can. But he said it just generally needs to move in this order. So, last username can if he really wants to quickly. Then we can go
Tiff,
to
can I just do a brief response to last? Yes.
Sure, you can do it, and then we'll go to Tiffany.
Sure. So last, as you say, some issues are social. I certainly agree that some issues are social. The question is, what can we change? And so culture, I'm suggesting here, is probably pretty malleable because the desire to censor things, the desire to have books published which you don't agree with, have those like cut down. This has existed for all of history. It doesn't seem clear to me that you can end those just by like changing culture or to make it more virtuous or something, because these things existed 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 50, 1,000, a million years ago. I'm sure they existed. It's very hard to think that we can just eliminate them because we make the right culture.
It's not hard to think at all. I can easily imagine that. I don't understand. Like,
it's just because you imagine it's feasible to change the nature.
I know it. It's
Okay,
like
we've
okay.
changed so
Okay.
much social
when
norms.
did we just let it happen?
I'm taking the baton. I'm handing it over to Tiffany now. Okay.
Thank you.
All right, there are a few things I want to say. First, I want to build off what SocDoneLeft said earlier, in that when you sign up to any social media platform, be it Facebook or Twitter, whatever, you have to read and agree to their TOS. If you break TOS and you suffer the consequences, that is on you. So that if you don't like it, you have to take it up with them. Secondly, I do like how the right wing always tries to play the victim, where they're getting way more crap than the left is right now. We get 6 books from Dr. Seuss taken away. They get a majority in the Supreme Court. We get some statues of traitors to America taken down. They get tax cuts for the rich. Their priorities are skewed.
Peace.
Alrighty. Well,
Is everything okay? Continue.
I think that's it.
Good. Is that everybody?
I would honestly say
Go to
that
closing statements, sir.
Well, Turk, you want to be starting closing statements because we got to wrap it up.
Sure. Yeah, it's just like, the company has every right to self-censor their own books. They've gone through their own procedures to take the stuff down. The only problem I have is that just because something's unpopular today doesn't mean that that goalpost is going to shift in the future. What was not offensive, like this bathroom book, it's all white people in it. It's a loving family. They're trying to teach this girl to go to the bathroom. When is that going to be deemed offensive? Because the majority of underprivileged people don't have a nuclear family. They're not the right color. Maybe we need to have a double dads in the book instead. When are we going to start changing everything across the board? Because we can't just be selective on how we're enforcing this outrage. We need to be all across America expecting these kind of things. So I demand everyone that's in favor of Dr. Seuss self-censoring, I want them to go to Disney, tell them to get rid of Dumbo, get rid of Aladdin, get rid of all sorts of different types of stuff. And it's got to be universal, guys. You can't just selectively censor people.
If you love Orwell, it's becoming real. It is real right now. Yeah. He thinks it's hilarious because it's being done in his favor. If it was being done against him, this dude would be raging.
Orwell warned about government totalitarianism, for Christ's sake.
To be clear, we guys got everybody. Okay. Everybody, it was closing statements and we started with Turk. We're not back to open forum, okay? That's not how this works. So, Drone, do you want to do your ending statements?
No, I have nothing smart to add at all to this, but I did have fun, and I appreciate you guys inviting me, Dylan, and meeting all of you. It was fun.
Yeah, wonderful. We're going to move it over to last username.
Yeah, so I think this conversation has been like derailing all over the place. I think this is really about a culture of censorship. It's not about law. It's not about rights. It's about if you don't like the content of a book, there's something wrong with it. Let's say there's something really is wrong with it. Should it be? Would you like it to cease to exist, or would you just like it to, I don't know, put a disclaimer on it or something like that? Should we have access to information like that? I think the answer is pretty obviously yes. I don't see why you would want information to just be removed from existence, have books just removed from existence. That's a very strange attitude. I don't think first of all, it's not a universal attitude. Lots of people disagree with that now. It's definitely a malleable attitude. It's something that's changed throughout history and across different cultures. And it's something we can easily change in the future. And the suggestion that, oh, well, people just censor, that's what people are going to do, can't do anything about that, is just so absurd. Of course we can change that, especially coming from a socialist who are usually quite optimistic about the ability of culture and norms to change. The whole reason these books are problematic now is because norms changed, right? That's what made the things that were acceptable back then not acceptable now. Why can't we change the norm of, like, we'd rather see books just sort of properly labeled or disclaimed rather than cease to exist? That, of course, we can change that.
Okay, next is going to be KOE.
Well, thank you one and all for joining us for this amazing evening on Dylan Burns TV. Before I start getting into who I am and what I do, one closing statement I'd like to say to you folks. When Dr. Robert Johnson, the compiler of the first great English dictionary, at one point met with the ladies of London after he had done so, and they said to him, Dr. Johnson, we are pleased to see that you did not include any unfit or obscene words in your dictionary. And he said, ladies, I congratulate you on being able to look that up. And for those who do get that joke, I'm pleased to see that about 10% of you can, you get the idea of you must always be suspect of the motives of those who are determined to be offended, of those who will go through a treasure trove of English in search of filthy words in order to just act as though they are offended and be appalled. You always have to be suspect of those motives, folks. Always remember that. But as I'm known to say around here, all that being said, thank you for joining us this evening on Dylan Burns TV, the Hippy Dippy Podcast. I am the devilishly handsome outlaw himself, your king of extreme, Phil KOE. You can find me at KOE Nation on YouTube, also the Revolutionary Wrestling Podcast, and Big Bucket and Liar. I'm so sorry. And I make occasional guest star appearances on the Tomfoolery Show, Dad's Worldwide, and Yanked Up Podcast. Folks, I love every last one of you. Raise a glass to yourself. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for being here. I love you all, and I'll catch you on the flip side.
Who doesn't love KOE? We're going to throw it over to SDL.
Sure. So I think that human norms can change. The question is how much. I point to like the vast majority of human history across enormous changes in like economic systems, like social norms, and it always seems like people want to reduce the power of those they disagree with. The question is, how can you mitigate that? The reason that I focus on policy is because we can actually change policy here. We can reduce the impact of intellectual property rights on the ability to publish. If these books were public domain, it wouldn't matter if the publisher wanted to stop publishing them, because you can just download the goddamn PDF, as you can if you just look it up. Similarly, if you moved towards more of a like publicly funded sort of like I like the idea of like media vouchers sort of approach, where there is like public funding of these sorts of things rather than leaving it entirely up to the market. Then a lot of these issues also are mitigated. There's a whole lot of evidence that public funding of media enormously improves the quality of media in general. Leaving the control of information up to the market, just to these cultural norms, is not a productive or efficient way to run society. There's literally studies that like NPR, PBS, and in general publicly funded media around the world is consistently the highest trusted and the most informative. And there's a reason for that. It's because they aren't motivated by profit. They're motivated by, in short, trying to inform people. This is an argument, I think, for a diverse and broad set of public funding and reduction of intellectual property rights.
Okay, next is going to be Tiffany Starr.
I wasn't really prepared for this topic because I didn't intend for us to make it this far. I thought we were just going to do the first three. That's how it's usually gone. All I have to say is I love how the right talks about cultural censorship when it's primarily the right fighting against marginalized communities, including women's rights, LGBT rights, and brown people. Turk said, will they add 2 dads to his book as if that would erase his culture? What's the problem with that? Drone is upset they pulled down Confederate statues, even though Confederates literally fought against America. KOE, I don't know what the hell KOE was talking about. I know he likes silver. The point is, it seems like a lot of their ire doesn't stem from us like taking away their culture, but us implementing ours.
I resemble that remark.
You resemble it. You do.
I love it. I'm gonna throw it over to Hutch.
Yeah, I mean, like one of the things I love about this country is when you think about just how far we have progressed, and especially in the last 20 years, the internet is something that is making this issue much more relevant and potent than it was just 30 years ago or 40 years ago. The reason why we're having so many of these discussions is because we're all talking. But I, for one, really love the fact that we don't use the same kind of language that we did 30 years ago, 40 years ago, 50 years ago. It indicates that we culturally are moving forward. That's not a bad thing, but there's bound to be growing pains while that's happening at an accelerated rate because of things like social media that spread ideas and arguments a lot faster than they did before. I just want to throw one final pitch out there. The Chicks, Home, Fly, and Wide Open Spaces are incredible albums. You should listen to them. Thank you.
Okay, now I'm gonna throw it over to Maddy.
Hooray. Yeah, I mean, overall, like this was a super fun panel to be a part of. As far as cancel culture is concerned, I feel like that term has been weaponized by the right as a distraction tactic, largely. This is my statement, sir. And like the Dr. Seuss debacle is a case study in the right-wing grievance industry that reframes normal age-old processes like removing books from circulation as some sort of sinister suppression. Listen, 24 hours of a news cycle on Fox News ain't going to fill itself. So I appreciate the hustle. I don't love it, but I appreciate it. And I think this is something that we're seeing being brought to the surface again, because it's now all of a sudden people who are in power being held accountable for their actions versus how it's historically happened, where people in power are the ones that are, quote, canceling those who dissent from them. And all of a sudden, now that you see any sort of opinion counter to the powers that be, and people using their collective power and influence to call them out on it, all of a sudden that makes it a bad thing. So I agree with Hutch that I think I'm glad that we don't use the same language from 30 years ago. It's encouraging to see that our society is moving forward in that way. And I hope to see more of it. And I mean, for me, at least, I always look for opportunities to make sure that I'm being more inclusive, that my language is always evolving so that I'm not, I can be part of the solution, not the problem. So that's what I have to say on this. But otherwise, again, Dylan, thank you so much for having me on here. I had a really good time and this was fantastic. Oh, and KOE is doing prop comedy. So
just putting KOE Nation on YouTube. I am never above some shameless self-promotion.
Wonderful.
Never.
I will, of course, in the YouTube video, everybody's stuff will be linked below if you want to check them out. And I want to thank everybody for coming on. It was a blast. I'm really happy with this roundtable, even if I raged at some parts for personal restraint. I think this was a really good roundtable. I think it was a good mix of entertainment, policy discussion, etc. Thank you so much for everybody coming on. I'm gonna head out. You're all free to stay in here to chat if you want to, for whatever reason. You all have a blessed day. Okay. Have a good
Thanks for
weekend.
inviting me, Dylan. I had fun.
Later, Dylan.
Wonderful.